Hey, John, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. Everything
Great.
seems to be working okay.
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. It's
Okay,
beautiful.
great. Excellent. Well, thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. I've had it in mind for a good while, just only getting around to it now.
Yeah, I understand. Life gets busy.
Yes. Yeah. We're having a sort of a heat wave here in Ireland
I've
at the
I've I've
moment.
actually been hearing that, and I just looked it up to see what was going on. It seems to be hot everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Normally, I can sort of close everything in and have make it quite soundproof. All the windows are open today and the wind is blowing, which is nice, but if you hear
Yeah,
that in
I
the
was kind of
background, that's what's going on.
okay. Yeah, I'm actually sitting under a fan right now myself because of how hot it is here too. Hoping it wasn't too noisy or anything.
No, can't hear it at all.
Okay, perfect. I opted out of the air conditioning room just because I thought that might be too loud.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for putting up with
Of
the heat.
course. It's early enough at this hour, so I don't have to worry
Yeah,
about it too much.
that's right. Yeah, it's good. There's almost a day between us.
Yeah.
Now, if you're listening, I am talking to Sean Cheetham in California. And just to give you a time context for our conversation, today is Monday, the 18th of July, 2022. So, just to sort of kick things off, if someone's listening and they haven't seen your paintings, how would you describe them?
Uh, I would say figuratively. I don't know what the good description for, but I'm definitely a figurative painter, although I like to paint many different things, but I think I fit within that genre. Um, Contemporary, modern. I like to paint things that are going on now for the most part. Doesn't mean, I guess, I am not exploring some older themes currently. But yeah, I'm mostly an oil painter, but I do many other things other than just painting. And I've spent a lot of time teaching, so sort of go in between showing in galleries and doing more educational stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. Just quickly talk about, or just to say the different things that you do because they're very interesting.
Currently, one of my main interests is blacksmithing, and I like to make knives. I have a forge set up out in the garage. I play music. I have been learning engraving lately, which is another thing I like. I do illustration work digitally or sometimes with analog paint as well. And what else do I do? I like to have fun when I can, get outside, play some sports. I do enjoy sports sometimes, which maybe isn't what most artists find themselves doing.
Yeah, yeah. I saw a cartoon the other day, and it was showing people how to identify people by their suntan lines. So they had like skateboarders, and they had like shorts, and then the knee pads were white, and where the shorts were white, and
Oh, that's
people who like
funny.
water skiing, they had the life jacket where the life jacket would be was
Oh,
white,
yeah.
and the rest of them was tanned. And then they had an artist, and they were just completely white from head to
Yeah.
toe.
I definitely prefer to stay um, pale, but currently my neck is very dark with a line because I just got back from Italy teaching over the summer and it was very hot there too.
Ah, nice. How
But my
many
sport was hockey, so definitely no tan lines from that.
hockey, ice hockey?
Ice hockey, yes, yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I know people. My wife actually, yeah, who used to play hockey in school, but it wasn't ice hockey. It was on the pit on with the stick, and
Yeah, yeah, okay.
you can tell I know a lot about it. It
Yeah.
was with the stick. Um, how long were you in Italy for?
I was there for just a month exactly. I taught a class that was 2 weeks long, and then I spent a couple weeks traveling with my girlfriend and just hanging out with other friends in Italy.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I've been doing that like about 9 years now. Every summer, we took one year off because of the pandemic, and we were able to make it back last year, which was great because it was still quiet. And this year was
Yeah.
pretty insane for travel. It wasn't quite as fun as I had. I mean, it was fun, of course. It's always great, but it was just the sheer amount of people was crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's been nuts here as well. Dublin Airport, they've had queues. Oh, you probably saw that in the news as well. Dublin Airport has been crazy. people
Yeah, yeah.
people trying to get out.
Yeah. I know everyone wants this is like caged animals being let free,
Yeah.
but and I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What where was the course? Is that the one in Rome?
Yeah,
The
that's the
the
one in
teaching?
Rome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, lovely.
the Rome workshops. Yeah, it's a fun thing we've been doing for a while, and it's been pretty successful.
There's a few artists do that, isn't there? Like it's a kind of it's not just
Yeah,
one.
yeah, it's kind of like run by David Simon, the sculptor, and then he has this year there were 3 sessions of 2 weeks each. The first session I was there, and Natalia Fabia, who you I think have interviewed, was there
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
teaching, and then David was teaching sculpture, and then in the second session we had I didn't work that one, but Hollis Dunlap came out and
Oh, great. Yeah.
Mark Trujillo, and I can't remember. I think that was probably all they added
Hollis
that
has been
session.
on the podcast as well.
Yeah, yeah, I listened to that one while I was driving, and then Nicholas Uribe was just there. I missed him this year, but I was there with him last year, which was great,
Oh, nice. Brilliant.
and a
He's been on the
few
podcast too.
others. Yeah, yeah, I was just mentioning the ones that I've listened to on your on your podcast.
Brilliant. So, just to put your sensibilities in context, who are your creative heroes? Are they all artists?
I mean, definitely there's the artists that the painters, I guess, that people tend to like. Like I've always loved the Rembrandts and well, Rembrandt, maybe not Rembrandts, but um,
Yeah, his brother was rubbish at painting.
yeah,
Did he have a brother?
John.
He did, yeah.
Uh, okay, the lesser known Rembrandt.
Yeah.
I've always liked Sargent and his way of painting. Technically speaking, I've been really into Caravaggio lately, just having gone to Rome now so many years and seen those paintings in context. So I've been reading. I don't usually read, but I'm actually reading now, and it's been pretty fun. Um, I love. There's a bunch of engravers I like, of course, and knife makers and armor. I love making. I'm been trying to make armor, so I've been studying some of those guys and got to visit some collection in Vienna, which was amazing and inspirational. I grew up in a family of artists, so I had some inspiration there. My dad was a jeweler, and so that kind of ties into everything that I do now, especially. And I've had a couple just great teachers over the years, here and there, different colleges or whatever that really set me on my path. I was actually able to go to a show of an old instructor, my first watercolor instructor in community college from like the mid '90s, James Torlickson, and hadn't talked to him or seen him. I still haven't, but I was able to see a show of his work just like 2 weeks ago, which was really awesome to revisit those pieces and kind of take me back to those years.
Oh, that's lovely. Who's the guy I follow a young fella on the on YouTube? I was going to say the YouTube. Who says that? Um, Alex Steele. You know him?
Oh
He's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
was
He's great.
following that guy since he had a few followers, and he really blew up, which is cool. I think he's perfectly made for the YouTube.
He is.
Got that age, and I really like how he shows even that when he makes mistakes and works through them. I think that makes it very accessible to a lot of people, and I think he's exposed a lot of people to blacksmithing.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't particularly interested in it, but yeah, as you say, he just makes it interesting. So I kind of
Yeah,
watched
yeah, yeah.
and
He's got that energy of his youth.
he's got all the machines as well, all the
Oh
gadgets,
my
and
gosh, yeah, he's got.
he's
I would love to have his shop.
yeah, he doesn't have. You don't see him hammering away with the hammer. He's got this machine. He
Yeah,
puts it in and
yeah.
it's
I
like,
know. I don't have one of those yet. I'm just using my
yeah,
arms. It's my exercise now.
yeah. But I learned a bit from watching it, the way he was rolling the steel and folding it, and then how that created this patina and the steel. I was like, wow, wow. And I've seen it in passing. It's like, oh, that's how they do that. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Fun stuff. There's a show on a History Channel out here called Forged in Fire that has It's a bladesmithing competition show where I think it's
Oh, right.
turned a lot of people on to the art of blacksmithing and bladesmithing.
Yeah, I saw. There's another one like that on. I think it must be Netflix. And it's about glasswork.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that
Um,
show a lot, actually.
yeah,
Makes me
that's good,
want
isn't
to add
it?
another hobby to the list, but I don't
Yeah,
think I
it's
can do it yet.
amazing the stuff they were doing. I didn't
Yeah,
realize you
yeah,
could do
very
half
cool.
that stuff with glass. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I really like that show a lot. Hoping there's going to be a new season sometime.
How many have they got now? I think they've got two seasons now. I haven't watched the second one.
Yeah, I think that's all I've seen too, is
Just
the
two.
two
Yeah.
seasons. Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have like? Do you like makers? Is that a?
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah, me
mean,
too.
I enjoy a lot of crafts and stuff, and I don't know, and I just like learning how things are made, like the how it's made show. Like I'd be excited to learn how to make anything at least once.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that on Sesame Street. They do that thing about how it's made. They'd have the. Is it
Yeah, I
Sesame
think
Street? I think it was Sesame
I don't
Street.
know. I mean, it's
I
been a
used to.
while since I watched Sesame Street, but even with my son, I
Dude,
don't.
look at me. It's obviously a lot longer since I watched Sesame Street. Come
Yeah,
on.
maybe you've got the memory though, I guess.
That's true. Yeah. Who's the other one I really like? Laura Camp. Do you know her? On
I,
YouTube.
I don't know if I
She's a
do.
German lady. Just makes great stuff. Really similar again. Very accessible. Just makes all these little gadgets and little handy little knick-knacky things. And
I'll have to
yeah, I
check
think
her
she's
out.
she's great. Yeah, Kamp. Camp. Yeah, maybe it's PH. Yeah, she's great.
Okay, I'll check her out.
So you said you grew up in a family of artists. How did you end up being an artist? Was it? Did you know early? Was it a?
I mean, so I did art my whole life because it was around. Even my dad, who was working hard as a jeweler, would draw with us when we were kids. And my mother is Chinese, so that side of the family it was kind of more of the art side. And my grandmother could draw and stuff pretty well, and she like when we'd go to restaurants, with the crayons, she would draw anything out of her head, and I learned a lot. This early anatomy lessons, she would draw these like muscle men, like a kind of, just like a Mr. Olympia type of guy. So I remember that stuff, and my mom's cousin that came over from China when I was pretty young. He was cool because he had a motorcycle, but he also drew. He was an amazing draftsman. I remember sitting around for Christmas dinners, and before he could really speak English, he would sit there and draw. My dad passed out on the couch or whatever, and it looked like, in my memory, like academic, like Chinese academic charcoal drawing of just my dad
Wow.
passing. So I grew up doing that and just sketching with him, drawing motorcycles and doing whatever. And one of my mom's cousins who went to the school I went to remembers me, I guess, drawing in perspective at a very young age. So it was just something that was around,
Hmm.
and was it wasn't taboo or anything, and it was just always happening. My mom's father used to paint and sculpt. I've got some cool pictures of him, like with a ton of like plaster busts that he had sculpted, and there's a few oil paintings around. My mom's from Hawaii, so we'd go visit every summer. My grandfather out there, and I get to see that stuff, and it was just part of the deal. It was always part of my life. And then, but it's not something I thought I'd do as a career or ever thought that this would be my job. But I wanted to be a firefighter. But mostly the job I remember or that I wanted to do was be a firefighter or maybe like a trash man, just because I knew they only worked to like half a day and they got paid pretty well and got to walk around outside. But when I started community college in about like 1995, I found myself dropping out of all the academic classes and just sticking with the art classes. And I think it was during that time that people started to tell me I should probably go to art school, and moved to Los Angeles in 1998 to start school at Art Center College of Design, and never looked back and never had another job since.
Beautiful.
Still looking at being a firefighter, a trash man, but things don't work out.
Well, I have I know somebody who's in their early 40s and they are learning to become a train driver.
Oh, that's crazy. Interesting. That
Yeah,
sounds fun. That'd
yeah,
be a fun one. I get that.
yeah. So, it's not too late.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm definitely learning all kinds of new things right now, which could eventually, I guess, become my job, but I do think they're all within the arts of some sort.
Yeah, yeah. So how does the idea for a painting start for you? Are you a sort of sketchbook person? Do you make little thumbnails? How do you capture those
That
initial ideas?
they can go any way. I mean, I do a lot of portraits and kind of have gone mostly that route for my career. And generally with those, like the idea is pretty simple because a portrait to me can be mostly just, I mean, there's not, if it's a commission portrait, I don't think about too many things, but it really varies. Like sometimes I will do thumbnails and sketches if I have an idea in my head I need to work out. And I do like that process. I enjoy painting from imagination to figure things out and then trying to shoot photo reference to match somehow. Um, Sometimes I just use the camera and go straight for that, kind of looking through the lens to find my compositions. But yeah, it really kind of varies depending on the piece. Like right now, I'm supposed to be working on a show for next year that will be more. There'll be figurative paintings. The show will be a dark western theme. It's a four-person show, and for that, I definitely need to do some sketching, a lot of research, reading, maybe some writing, and then get down to kind of figuring out the compositions, maybe looking at old paintings for inspiration. I like referencing things like, some of the stuff I've seen in Rome, especially in the churches. But yeah, it can really vary. And now I've been doing a lot of digital work on the iPad, which is a fast way for me to figure out some ideas. Maybe you can throw photos in there and take colors from them, or just kind of put compositions together and then work on top of them. So it's changed over the years, but lately it's been like a lot of iPad to figure things out.
Very good. And what do you use for that? Like Procreate or something like that?
Yeah,
Or
Procreate, that's the only one I know. I went when in school we had to learn a little bit of computer work, and so I did Photoshop, but I've never actually paid for Photoshop, and now it's much harder to get away with doing that. And once I got Procreate, I kind of just really fell in love with using the iPad and having the pencil and actually having the pencil touch the screen as opposed to like how I used to with Photoshop. I would be, look, maybe have a Wacom tablet or whatever, and then looking at the screen while drawing down below. And there was always a little bit of a disconnect there for me. And once I got used to the iPad, I really fell in love with it as a medium. And now I've even used it for jobs and things for finished work,
wow.
for illustration, not for any sort of gallery or commission work.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. I switched to GIMP, the open
Okay.
source one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
It's
I
a bit
think I maybe heard you talking about that in a podcast, and then I took note of it, and then I never went to go use it. But I should now remember it for real because I do need Photoshop still, at least for basic printing stuff and
yeah.
kind
It's
of,
it's it's a bit clunky because it's open source, but
yeah.
it does everything for me. I mean, I wasn't using it, you know. I wasn't using Photoshop, if Photoshop's a Lamborghini, I was driving 5 miles an hour, down the road
Yeah, yeah.
with
Like the
training wheels on.
Flintstones with your feet through the
Yeah,
bottom of the car.
yeah. So GIMP certainly does all the stuff I wanted to do, but yeah, it's different the way it's kind of put, the way it looks, but
Yeah.
it does all the same things, and
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I
I mostly
love
just
open
need it
source
to.
stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll definitely check that out because my Photoshop now just doesn't work at all. And I'm really mostly just like it for printing things now. So it's kind of useless to pay all that money for just the application for printing.
So do you work from life, or is it just photos, or a combination of both?
So I've been teaching for 20 years and it's been like that's all from life. I mean, mostly from life, the majority of it. When I go to Rome, it's all from live models. So I do tons of work from life. But for when I'm making a piece that's going to be either a commission or for a gallery or even just for myself to make a piece, it's never from life because I just do enough of that and I don't know. I think it's great working from life, and I enjoy it a lot. But I do keep them somewhat separate. I went to school and got a degree in illustration. So we painted from life a ton and drew from life all the time, but we were also just doing a lot of uh, designing outside of painting from life and making stuff up. And so I think I sort of use both things, but I don't do the life painting at all for work stuff other than just teaching.
Right.
Then I can work at any hour. I don't have to worry about getting a model in, or I don't have to worry about just wanting to paint for a few minutes at a time. And it's just a lot easier for me to work from photography, even with the limitations that I think people feel like they have, which I don't nowadays feel like there's that many limitations to photography, to working with photography.
Yeah. So we've had lots of questions come in from social media.
Yeah, I
Um,
kind of peeked at a few of them.
Good. This is from Brett Anderson on Instagram. He said, "What are the advantages and disadvantages for an artist with the way the cameras have changed over from film to mostly digital? For example, as it pertains to photo reference for paintings or in documentation of work. Many things have been gained by going digital, it seems, but are there things that have been lost?"
I mean, I don't feel like there's things that have been lost too much. Like when I was in school, though, I had to for when we needed reference pictures, I didn't have a camera. I had to go use those disposable paper covered cameras and then go get the pictures developed. And then, that took a few days. And then you hope you got a good picture. And even if you didn't, then that's what you got and that's what you're working with. So I do find like the ease of having a camera in your everyone's got a camera in their pocket now. Like it does help. I mean, maybe iPhones and smartphones aren't the best thing, but they are pretty good compared to the old way I had to do it. And I mean, the whole world's digitized now, so I think for taking reference, it's great. I think the screen as a monitor to paint from is nice with the light, gives you kind of bright colors as opposed to maybe if you have a bad printout, which I also enjoy sometimes because it frees me up. So, I mean, I think there's benefits to both, but sort of depending on how you trained too. Like I sometimes really embrace a terrible photo because it just gives me room to use my imagination more. Or I even enjoy when the color's broken up sometimes where you get warms and cools within a gray that might not be there if you were just looking at it. So I kind of play off of that too. And as far as documenting work, I used to take my folk paintings in and get slides or 4x5 transparencies, and I still had to scan them somehow. So I think nowadays, like straight into the computer is so much easier. But of course, now in my phone, I have like 40,000 pictures, and it makes it almost too easy in some way. So I don't think there's any. I mean, personally, I don't have any problem with how things have gone digital. I find it much easier for myself.
Right.
Did I answer all the parts of that question?
Yes, you did.
Brett told me he was going to ask me a question. I didn't know which one it was going to be.
LD on Patreon, thanks for the TL, says the work John shared has so many wonderful and unusual details to draw us in. She's talking about what I shared on Instagram and Patreon, which was the same. I feel that these plot details and the technical narrative conveys a real sense of story and character. Do you craft a story or narrative about your painting? And what role does that narrative play in the choices you make as you paint?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. In the beginning of my career, a lot of those ones you actually posted, I was surprised. Like you must have deep dove because they're almost 20 years old. Some of those pieces. Um, but I,
I just went to your website and picked what I liked.
oh, okay, wasn't sure what's on there still. Um, my website's probably pretty old too at this point. So I would say sometimes the story comes first, but a lot of times because I was really just trying to, in the beginning of my career with some of those, I was really just trying to paint portraits of people that were in my life and do them in either some with their natural setting or one that I found interesting for them to be in. So there's not a lot of story there, more just me studying people and trying to make paintings of people and get better. If it's say an artist friend or something, I really want them in their own environment just for it to feel natural. And then every once in a while, like a story comes along first. I might think of a movie or something else or some book I read and kind of make that part of the story. But at some point that gets lost too, I guess. And yeah, they might feel maybe deeper than they are. I always like to leave things a little more open to the viewer to have their own interpretation of it and feel like they could participate and create story as well for themselves. But I think now I'm kind of changing that as a little bit and putting specific stories together, especially with the new body of work that's coming up. There'll be more figures probably and more story based.
Right. LD also says, and most important, is the snake alive? Now she's talking about the painting of Natalia Fabia with the snake in the background.
Yes, I definitely have a white albino cobra pet. No, it's
Yeah.
actually over there in the corner looking at me right now. That was just on my desk. That was actually in my old studio, and she had come over, and I just needed to take some pictures and for a show I was doing, and so she came by, and I was able to take some pictures of her in my space, and it was just clearly a mess that wasn't set up. That's just how my desks look. That snake came from my mom's cousin in Hawaii. They were going to throw it in the trash one year when I was there. It's just a taxidermied snake, and I thought I'd take it home. So I've had it ever since, and it's just been sitting around staring at me.
Poised.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be wild if that was a pet snake that you could get to
Oh
do
my
that
God.
on command,
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Sit them on the desk. I actually live in a place now where there are more snakes to watch out for, so I'm kind of constantly looking around for rattlesnakes to make sure I don't step on them.
Ah, yeah. Wow. Do you do color studies or value studies before you start the main kind of painting?
Not always. If I can get good photos and I have the vision in my head, then I will do it that way and just go straight to it through the camera. But I do also color and value studies when maybe I have a pretty loose idea in my head and I want to like get it out on paper. Mostly color more than a value study because that to me I can kind of address both things at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do enjoy color studies, but it really varies. Like if the vision is in my head, then I can work it out pretty well, I think, when I have some time to do a few studies. And especially to figure out like how I might want to photograph and logistically speaking, how to get this image into the camera somehow and then onto my screen so I can paint it.
Right. Mason Williams in California says, "Hi guys, love the podcast and Sean's work." Great, thanks, Mason. Sean, your drawing skills are unparalleled. What helped you learn to draw so well? Any methods in particular? And then they have in brackets the Riley method. And
Yeah,
it says,
I saw that one and I was like, I mean, I know Mason and Kelly through teaching, and I, I mean, I went to Art Center, which was we had they. I don't know if it's based in a Riley method, but no one ever taught me about the Riley method. I didn't learn about that until people asked me that question as an instructor.
well,
Um,
just for someone who's listening who hasn't heard of the Riley method, can you briefly explain it?
I mean, I can't explain it. I've just heard of it. It's just some,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know, some figurative method that people follow. But I mean, for me, it was just a matter of I've always been decent at drawing because of how long I've been doing it. Um, and then when we were in school, we were just forced to draw a ton. It wasn't really method. It was more of just like do it a lot and do it all the time and keep a sketchbook and draw constantly and drawing from life and drawing while you're out and about, at a coffee shop or whatever. And just it was really about doing it a ton. So I don't think there's a specific method. Maybe I don't know if that's the one, but there's some of those methods where they draw like for a head, they'll draw a bunch of circles and shapes that have specific proportions and then fit everything into like some standardized ideal and then put the person's specific features on it. But for me, it was always just more based on observation and looking. So I don't think there's a specific method for me. The method is do it a ton.
Right. So, how does the drawing phase go for you? Do you draw directly on the canvas, or do you make a sketch and then transfer it on, or how does that bit go?
Just like some of that other stuff, it depends. Like I definitely have done a full drawing and transferred it. I like drawing with a brush sometimes. Sometimes I like drawing with graphite on the on a panel and then painting over it with acrylic paint just to create a barrier between the graphite and the oil paint. And sometimes, like, I just started a self portrait the other day. It's kind of sitting back there behind me, like with the red background, where I just made a mess to start with bigger brush, and then addressed the drawing as I went through it. And that kind of reminded me why I like to draw things out first, just to avoid the frustrating middle stages. But I enjoy doing all kinds of it. When I'm painting from life, it's definitely drawing with a brush all the time, and so that's what I feel probably most comfortable with. But I enjoy, and then in doing a piece for finish, I probably prefer using graphite and the acrylic washes that I was talking about. So
Right. Do you have a preference for substrates like canvas, boards, panels? What's
yeah,
your preference?
definitely. Like, I mean, I've changed that over the years too, but it's mostly been panels. I like panel with a acrylic ground of gesso, the acrylic gesso first, which well, it depends on. I definitely the panel makes it like I might seal it with something that will prevent any sort of the oils from penetrating the board or from anything fugitive coming out of the wood if it's a piece of plywood or some sort of masonite or um, so I'll seal it with this stuff by Golden called GAC 100, which apparently does block out those things. And then I'll
Right.
do the acrylic gesso and build up some texture with a bristle brush just to create something that I can then add what's it called, modeling paste, or some companies call it molding paste, but it's like a texture paste, some sort of. You could almost make it with acrylic gesso and calcium carbonate, and just apply that with like a trowel or a big spackle knife, and because of the texture built up with the brush, I can kind of run the blade over the top of it and fill it in and get a pretty smooth finish without having to sand too much of it. So that's kind of what I like, is a really absorbent, flat surface. Some people find it to be they think it's slick, but it's smooth and flat, but it's so highly absorbent that it does grab the paint and create a nice physical bond hopefully for the longevity of the painting.
Nice. And oh, do you ever use the aluminium panels at all, or is it
I've
always
been,
just the?
yeah, I've kind of started to use those, and I find those very nice because I think they're dimensionally stable, and you don't have to worry about like how like a wood grain can open up over time and create lines in the painting. They're thin, and I think they can be pretty stable up to like 10 feet. So I do enjoy them quite a bit. I don't know how, like, if you, when you put a finish on them, how well the gesso is going to stick to it. I know you kind of have to etch them or whatever, or sand it highly. I do like, maybe like the safest thing for me to use one of those would be like one with a linen over the top of it. And then I'll fill in the linen texture the way I do with the panels, and create kind of maybe that's the most archival version of what I would do, I would say, possibly.
Yeah,
So
right.
I've
Yeah.
definitely been playing with those, and I like them a lot.
Do you do like a grisaille phase in your paintings or not?
It's funny. I was just like talking to my girlfriend about like doing that now just to try it out. I do like I was saying, I do the acrylic thing, and I guess that's my version of a grisaille. Because I went to school for illustration, we didn't learn about those sorts of things that I guess people do in more of the ateliers and traditional types of painting training. And that's probably why I do the acrylic thing, because of how I trained. And so in some way I do, because I draw, I'll say maybe the way I've done it most is draw it out with graphite, and then I'll take just black and white, not even white, just black gesso or black acrylic, and use it like a watercolor. So I'm not putting too much down. I'm just kind of creating washes that will seal the graphite. And so I guess that is a version of it, but I don't like painting it up fully in black and white and then glazing, because I just didn't learn how to do it that way. And most of what I learned was like working with tight deadlines. So I never found it like useful to paint it twice. but now I'm just kind of like, well, maybe I should try it out and see what it's about. I've got, more time, and maybe I shouldn't talk down on all those techniques so much. But I was really taught to paint very directly. So once I get that drawing down, I just go in with full color and apply very directly, and don't plan on going back for a second pass. Even though I
Yeah,
don't
right.
plan on it, I do go back for a second pass often. But I think I just want to try it to see the benefits of it, and I enjoy learning all kinds of things. So I'm gonna probably give it a shot soon.
Right. So, from what you're saying, it sounds like you do you paint more kind of alla prima rather than glazes, or how would you describe your
Yeah, yeah. I
work?
never really learned to glaze in school. It wasn't something we did. When I was studying and we did oil painting, it was always direct painting because at the school I went to was more of a design-based school, and so I went to illustration because that's where we could do figurative art. If you went into the fine art, you'd be like, I don't know, splashing paint around, even or not using paint at all, maybe just doing some performance thing and talking about it. And so I wanted to do illustration, and I actually wanted to work in movies and things anyway. So that was sort of why I did that. But through that, we did a lot of figurative art and painted from life. But we never put the tape on the ground to mark our easels. So it was always like the long pose painting for us was 5 hours, and long pose drawing is like 20 minutes. So it's very much an alla prima approach to painting where it's just do it and then you're done and you get what you get. And so that's also what I've been teaching for the last 20 years. It's just painting, whether it's a 3 hour class or a 7 hour class, like we're doing it all that day, and we're not doing it the next week at all or tomorrow or whatever.
Brilliant. What did you want to do in movies?
I just thought I'd want to do like storyboarding or,
Oh
design
yeah.
stuff, that kind of the quick sketchy stuff. My mom's cousin who had gone to the same school as me, she was, when I was just getting into college, was dating this guy Eric Tiemans, who was big in at George Lucas's company, working for them, ILM, and working at Skywalker Ranch, and he was doing all that stuff like that when they were bringing Star Wars back out. Um, it was sort of when they were first editing the old ones, and so I just thought, well, that I love Star Wars, and that's art, and those two things to me like were exactly what I thought I wanted to do. But then I started doing oil painting just because it was part of the training, and I really fell in love with oil painting. And then some of my instructors who were doing that were showing in galleries, and it's just really appealed to me to like do whatever you feel like and sell it, as opposed to do what someone else feels like,
Yeah.
and making you do it. But yeah, that fluctuated while I was in school too. Towards the end, I started thinking more about doing it again, but I stuck with the oil painting and the fine art route of the gallery world, and just went down that path. But I still think about doing those things, and I have friends that work in that field, and here and there I've done some digital illustrations, and it's still fun, and I think about it and may do more. See how it goes.
Yeah. Did you see Aranthazu Martinez's Jedi painting?
I probably did, yeah. Yeah, like I would still paint some Star Wars stuff. I actually have a big oil painting down in the hall of Luke Skywalker face down in the snow that I did for a Star Wars book,
Oh, nice.
a few years back. It was called Star Wars Visions, where like George Lucas had to approve the pieces, the sketches. So I had to do comps for that and studies and send them off to him for approval and for this big book. It was fun, it was kind of cool to do a big piece like that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that might be the same. Her painting might be in that book. I know she did it for them, or they,
Okay, it might be
yeah.
the one. Yeah, was there? Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about because I was just showing the book to some people the other day, and I think I came across it with the big monster in back and a female figure.
Yeah, she's
Okay, yeah,
reaching for her
yeah,
lightsaber.
amazing
Yeah,
painting. Yeah, yeah, that
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
one of the better ones in the book for sure.
Oh, I'm sure she'd be pleased to hear that. Um, do you have a favorite color palette that you always start off with?
I mean, I've been teaching the same palette that I learned from Michael Husser when I was in school, and then I've sort of added to it a little bit, and it's the one I've definitely been teaching for the last 20 years or so. It's a lot of colors, but I can go over them if that's not boring for people.
No,
Some
we
sort of
love that sort of stuff.
And the thing with color palettes that I don't love is that how brands kind of vary. So I might say a color and it'll be different with a different brand. So I think from left to right, it's like a cad green pale, which some brands just have cadmium green, a really bright green. And then
Well, if
there's
you know
a
the brand that you like, say it.
if you just go with like say well, I work with Gamblin now, so I should probably say Gamblin, but um in my training it was a lot of Winsor Newton. So if you were looking for the colors, Winsor Newton would have the when I say them would be the correct ones. But when I've switched to working with Gamblin, I've had to adjust a little bit. So because they don't have all the same colors. So like there's a they had Winsor Newton had burnt sienna, which I think is not burnt sienna. It's transparent red oxide or the PR101 pigment that many brands carry. For Gamblin, I think it is a transparent oxide of some sort, transparent red oxide, but it's just that single pigment, PR101. But Winsor Newton tends to use the same pigment for like 3 or 4 or 5 different tubes of paint. And so they call it burnt sienna, but natural burnt sienna to me is a little bit dull and boring, so I don't like using that. And then we go into like the red, which with Winsor Newton was a Scarlet Lake, which is very much in the kind of cadmium red light world. But I've been playing around with Gamblins and trying this one called Naphthol Scarlet, which seems close. I'm just trying all the different reds to see how close I can
Yeah.
get to that Scarlet Lake, but it's just an orangey red, just not too orange. And then a yellow ochre. I was using yellow ochre pale from Winsor Newton, who again has like yellow ochre pale, yellow ochre deep, yellow ochre green shade, yellow ochre light. They have a light and pale, which is like I don't even know what they're doing. But I just use regular yellow ochre from any brand now. And then I did use an Indian yellow a bit, and I think somebody mentioned that in one of the questions, but I don't use it a ton. I don't use it for black like I was taught to, and I haven't used it for black for many, many years. It's a very transparent yellow, originally made from urine. So it's got that kind of like you've been drinking too much coffee feel to it. And it's just like you add white to it and it brightens up into like a sunflower color, but you can add it into a black and it just like, because of its transparency, it doesn't really lighten the color. It just like pushes it towards yellow. And then titanium white, I love. I'm not a lead white user because of just we didn't use that in school. I like Gamblin's Radiant White. It's used with safflower oil instead of the linseed oil because I've found like on palettes when I've watched them dry, the yellowing come through in the linseed oil version a little bit too much. And the Radiant White seems okay for me so far, but I haven't done any long term testing of it. I've seen some people who've done tests of white and put out swatches and set them in the sun or sit them in a drawer. And I think everyone should try that. But you can also just kind of search that stuff online and see people's results over 10 years and kind of decide from there. I don't mind if the white yellows a little bit. Maybe if you use pure white or you get a little chalky, it might warm up and save you in the future anyway and just look fine in the painting. And then so I was taught to like put white in the middle. I don't know exactly where that comes from in history, but I've seen a couple pictures of people's palettes where they did that. So it must have just slowly been passed down. So on one side is kind of the warmer, lighter colors, and then on the right of the white is the darker and cooler section. So it goes from like a manganese blue hue, which is similar to like a cerulean green blue kind of color, and then to a cobalt blue, which I really love, kind of an expensive color, and then dioxazine purple or violet, which many brands carry. And all those colors I find to be pretty similar across the brands. Um, and then into an alizarin. So I learned alizarin crimson, but then I had seen some examples of how badly it can fade. I think it's one of the only colors when you look at the light fastness rating on the tubes, like that has a kind of a B score instead of an A or whatever. And I have seen examples of it, like in sped up version of something that sat in a window for 10 years and how much it can really lighten. So I went to the permanent alizarins, and I used to not like them because they didn't feel quite like the juiciness of an alizarin or the depth and the richness of an alizarin. And I was using Old Holland's alizarin Crimson Lake Extra for a while, which is a beautiful substitute, but it's one of those like $30 tubes of paint.
Hmm.
And so now I'm back to just using permanent alizarin from Gamblin, and I actually really like it. I don't know if I just don't care as much, about it. The more I get away from school, the many years that I just am not so precious with it, or they change the formula, or maybe a little bit of both. But permanent alizarin seem to work well for me. And then the next color that is kind of very unique to Winsor Newton mainly, but a few brands make it, is the olive green. It's a very, very almost black looking color, very transparent. And I feel like if you read the ingredients on the tube, it's almost like if you took ivory black and that Indian yellow I was talking about. And so it doesn't darken, it doesn't lighten the color, it just makes it kind of greenish. So I was taught to kind of use that dark green and then the alizarin, it's a dark red, to neutralize each other and make like those really rich blackish brown colors, and transparent. And then and then the addition I made to making black was the using the ultramarine blue, because I started playing around with, instead of the red and green combination for black, I started playing with burnt umber and ultramarine for a while, kind of a traditional mixture for black. And I didn't love the burnt umber, so I ditched the burnt umber and kept that olive and alizarin and the blue. But I now find it just like kind of annoying that I use three colors to make black all the time. Um, so I'm working with a bunch of gambling colors to try and figure out which two I can use to make black, a warm and a cool. And it's definitely going to be some sort of alizarin with maybe like something more in the phthalo world, probably, which kind of has the blue green quality. And I can kind of push it to a neutral black, but then get it into the red and blue or green world as well. And then when nobody's looking, I'll add all ivory black to my palette just to make things quicker. And sometimes I like a raw umber if I want like just to make my shadows kind of opaque and make them quickly. And I experiment, I don't have, there's no yellow, like bright yellow mentioned in there. So I'll use like right now for that portrait I was talking about that I just did the other day, the self portrait. I just threw out some random colors. I put ultramarine blue and black down. And then I had, I think that scarlet color and maybe a cadmium yellow and white. And that's it. I think that's all I used. And maybe that was kind of like inspired by Hollis's palette that he uses when I see him in Rome, which seems like he basically uses primaries, I think, and what he can do with those is pretty nuts. So yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of kind of playing around a lot with the palette, and because I'm working again with gambling, I'm trying to like figure out what I like working with their colors, and maybe just to experiment, because it's been so long working with one thing. I'm kind of tired of myself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Wow, that's a comprehensive answer. Fantastic.
Good thing it's recorded so people can rewind and
Yeah,
write it down.
that's right. Yeah, don't email me asking me what
Someone did ask. I saw
Sean.
someone asked it in a comment. I was like, it's kind of long for a comment to answer, so hopefully we'll go over it.
I
It's
know
out there
people
online.
regularly. People email me going, "Oh, do you remember somebody was mentioning this thing about this paint thing?" And I'm
You're like,
supposed to have
yeah,
this encyclopedic memory of, "Oh, that's alizarin crimson mixed with whatever." Yeah.
yeah. How about Google it?
Well, no, they're talking about a specific thing they would have heard in a conversation that only
Uh,
that artist does. But it's
uh,
like, you know, this is like
yeah,
this episode is 241. Like, I mean, I remember some things, but I don't remember everything.
yeah. They can just go listen to it again, I guess.
Yeah.
I've actually been
Uh,
working a little bit with that Zorn type of palette that people talk about, just black, white, and then like a red and a yellow, the yellow ochre. And I do enjoy that quite a bit. I find that um, very simple for basic skin tones in either natural light or like just white balanced light. So that's another thing I do play with sometimes.
right. Well, there's a question about skin tones coming up, so maybe that'll come back.
Okay.
Um, Pete Underhill on the Orkney Islands says, Sean, I am a huge admirer of your work in both metal and paint. My question is a painty one. In mixing your darkest dark mud from alizarin crimson, olive green, and Indian yellow, do you pre-mix a heap to get through a painting, or mix on the fly? I get the jitters if I need to match existing marks without having the correct mix prepared.
Yeah.
Or should I grow a pair and embrace the various twists and turns it provides? Stay awesome, Pete.
Okay, Pete. Well, that's one of the ones where somewhere he found out that I learned to use Indian yellow in my black, but I haven't used that for many, many years. So there's the first thing I would skip. And yes, definitely, if you're going to work on a big painting, I like to mix a big heap, heaping pile of paint. I think it's much easier to not have to remix if you want to keep your colors consistent. And I was definitely taught to do that. Like even with the skin tones, I do find the black can be more easily remixed because the little variations you get don't show up too much anyway, and maybe will create some variety within the painting. So yes, I would say mix big piles if you plan on going painting for a while. And it does drive me crazy when I'm teaching and people mix like a pile of paint that's an inch across and then their head's like 7 inches across and they think it's going to cover it. Like that to me doesn't even, the math doesn't work out. um and so yeah, I would even mix skin tones. I mix for the light stuff. I'll mix as much as I need for the day and I always throw it away. And I guess it doesn't hurt to also just grow up hair and learn to mix mix on the fly too. It's good training. But no, I would say if you want consistency, mix a lot of the color and keep it in the corner so you can keep pulling from it.
Very good. Susie Robinson in Australia says, "You're insanely beautiful flesh tones. Which colors do you use?" So you kind of mentioned it, but anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean those are just the colors, I think, and there's no one formula I think to use because everybody's different and every lighting situation's different. But for the most part, I do find like in natural light, like if you were to I've learned this through digital painting. If you color pick somebody's skin tones, every part of it, no matter which color skin they have, light to dark, and all the variations in between, if you color pick, it always ends up in the hue of orange, whether it's a desaturated orange or a saturated orange or slightly more yellow or slightly more red. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's no one answer to that. You could use every single color I mentioned and get it in varying degrees, or you can also maybe start. I've found a lot of times with the light colors, if you start with that transparent oxide and white and one of the blues, and just vary your amount of each one, you can get most people's base skin tone.
Very good. Assuming they're Caucasian, or does it make any
No, you
difference?
just use less white.
Less white, yeah.
Like tans get more of the, let's say as we go down from, like, you can use a lot of white for pale skin and maybe even more blue as it gets cooler. For dark skin, even the darkest of skin, definitely just backing off the white a little bit. But the red and yellow combination of making orange or using transparent oxide definitely addresses darker skin. And if you put the blues just to cool it, it's all, yeah, you can get everybody. The olive skin, really beautiful black skin, and tan colors, and all the pale people.
Yeah.
I'm probably missing some people's skin tone, but everything fits in between there.
Okay. Colleen Stapleton on Patreon, thanks for the tea, Colleen, says, "I absolutely love Sean's contrast of thin slash transparent areas of paint with thick opaque areas in the light. And I'm curious to know if he uses any mediums to aid in this effect."
Um, I don't use too many mediums usually. I was trained mostly with just using a solvent like odorless mineral spirits, and so a lot of the thin stuff you see is mostly that in the first pass. But yeah, if I paint a second layer, I'll use a medium because it's just an easier way to paint over the top of something when I need to thin it. But mainly the stuff you see that's super transparent and showing through to the ground would just be a odorless mineral spirit of some sort. Gamsol is what I use because of gambling and just kind of being the safest one we can get out here. I did just try they have a fluid like uh, mineral spirit free safflower oil based medium that I did try on that painting that I keep talking about that I was working on the other day. And I like it so far. It feels pretty good. Dries very shiny though, and I kind of like how when you use just a solvent that it actually thins the paint in a way it's not so oily. So I don't like to use too many mediums like that. But my favorite medium, I would say though, in painting a second layer is walnut oil and odorless mineral spirit mixed 50-50. If I have the time and I don't need it to dry quickly.
Right. And that safflower oil one you were talking about, where'd you get that from?
That's Gamblin's. It's
Okay.
they were using this like two. I don't know if you guys have Gamblin in Europe much. I don't think so. Just
No.
having gone to Italy so many times, but um, yeah, it's like those. They had a solvent-free gel medium that people were using and starting to use at the college I was teaching at because they were just trying to get rid of like solvents in the classroom, which I just couldn't do. It's just not how I paint, you know. Eventually, I just quit the job, but not because of solvent use, but for other reasons. But I don't know what they're using now. But you know, I understand like people are sensitive to it, and it's not good for us. So I am definitely trying to use things just to try them out and see if I like them and be a little more healthy, I guess.
Yeah. Colleen also says, I also just wanted to say, I think Sean paints hands so incredibly beautifully. I wondered if there's ever been a time in his learning that he really had to focus on hands, or whether it's something that's just developed alongside everything else. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Well, thank you for the comment, and I think yeah, I mean, everything had to be developed. I did have a natural, you know, knack for drawing because of just growing up around it. So even when I was in community college taking anatomy classes, like I was a little bit ahead of the game always just because I grew up doing it. And but there's no substitute for practice, observing, learning kind of construction um, based drawing, I guess, where you're first maybe the hand starts out as like a oven mitt, you know, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. And then you divide it up into fingers and whatever else. But I think yeah, just practicing and learning and studying a lot, copying other paintings, copying drawings you like. But I mean, I think you know most people. I think the art can and the craft can be learned through hard work. I think it's just a series of measurements that need to be put together.
Very good.
Pretty
That's
simple.
it, drawing. It's just a series of measurements that need to be
Yeah.
put together.
Yeah, if you could teach a monkey to be patient and measure, they could draw too.
Rohan Day Thanker on Instagram. Sorry if I slaughtered your surname there, Rohan. Could you elaborate on your series of brushes and what makes them different than other synthetics available?
I mean, I haven't used a ton of other synthetics. I just work with that company Trikel, and they've been, you know, very supportive of my career. And when I started um, trying brushes from these smaller companies that would just, you know, contact you and send me stuff. Um, I was using the Winsor Newton University series brushes. They're like a white nylon bristle with a red handle and a white kind of painted end. And those I think you could find in most places. And that's just what I used in school for acrylic, oil, watercolors, whatever. I'm sure a lot of people don't like them or hate them, and but I that's what I trained on a lot. Other than using bristles, you know, which I do enjoy, hog bristle as well. But for the more fine work, I used those. And then when I got a hold of the ones from Trikel, they sent me. I just tried the sizes I liked, and they were pretty much clones or you know mimicked exactly how those worked for me. And they broke in the same. They lasted the same. They were maybe they lasted a little better or longer. And yeah, so the performance was there. And I just think brushes are such a personal thing. You know, you just try a bunch out and see what you like. And definitely don't expect people to like what I like. Um, but the cool thing about them is the paint job that I got to design. I guess the most unique thing is I got to have a black brush with a black ferrule and black bristles and gold writing. I got to finally design them how I wanted them. So, that's about it. Other than like them working like the brushes I like to use, they have the cool paint job with my name on them and a little skull that I had painted. So, so you
You've
look cool when you go to class with your black brushes.
you've worded out your brushes.
But they're also like not they're affordable too, which I like. I'm not like somebody who loves using mongoose or some endangered animals' hairs just to paint with. Like I'll destroy those brushes so quickly too with the way I paint that like I like they're affordable. I don't remember exactly what they were, but when they first came out with them, it was like around $50 give or take for a set of 8 brushes, and I don't think that's breaking the bank or anything for a set of brushes.
Yeah, that is good. What sort of palette do you use?
Like the physical palette,
Yeah, like glass, wood,
I tend to use
upright,
wood.
flat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, mostly flat, not the parallel palette idea where it's just, I mean, that's fine. I like putting my palette on the easel next to the painting if I have the room for it, and I'll do that. I did that in class in Rome just because it was easier to talk to the students and have them side by side and point it out so they didn't have to like stand up and look over my shoulder. But generally, wood that is sealed of some sort. I like wood. I don't use a big oval palette. I have in the past, but I never held it. So it just looked like, it was more about me looking like an artist than using a practical palette. So, I mean, my
Yeah.
go-to is just
I
like
wonder has everyone done that? I did it.
yeah, the oval
And
palette, but you just put it on the table anyway. And there's like
well, I
holes.
tried it. I tried holding it, but I just found it was gonna. I was like, this is gonna give me repeat strain injury in my thumb. Like all the pressure, all the weight is on my thumb joint. I was like, this can't be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind like if I'm working on a large piece and I need to walk back and forth, then it's nice to have it there. But yeah, it's just kind of like I like to have that hand more available with a paper towel to keep my brushes clean, which I do a lot. I'm constantly using paper towels um, and kind of dumping paint. But I like a wood palette. I like my first easel was a French easel and it came with a wood palette, and I think I scrapped the one they had in there because it had the hole in it and the cutout, and I just cut a piece of plywood the right size. And after 1 or 2 days of painting, just kind of rubbing the paint in and letting that create the seal, that became the palette. If you use a wood palette over time, it just becomes like almost glass. You have to be more careful about cleaning it, like more like right when you're done painting, so you don't get dried paint on it. But ideally, I guess glass is the best thing if you're in a studio because it's the easiest to clean. Even when it's dry, you can clean it. You can put different pieces of colored paper under it if you want to like have let's say if you're painting a really crazy blue painting, it might be nice to have a blue palette so you can see your colors a little bit more. But yeah, I generally have been a glass, I mean a wood guy, and then every once in a while when I'm being lazy and not wanting to do so much cleaning, I use the wax paper ones. And now if I do that, I'll use the gray ones because I years ago was wanting gray paper palettes, and I should have gone down the path of inventing one of those because maybe I could have been retired by now because those are a thing that I think are very useful, and now those are everywhere. So I vary, but wood I would say is my go-to.
Okay. How do you check yourself as you're working? Like some artists use mirrors, or they'll turn the painting upside down, or they'll take photos on their phone, or they're sort of jumping back and forth all the time, or they get their friends in to tell them what they think. What sort of things do you do?
Yeah, I get I do a little bit of all those things. The other day I did flip that painting upside down, but I just don't like feel like looking at it upside down helps me that much. I can usually tell when something's wrong, and so then I just have to figure out how to fix it. I do ask my girlfriend or son who's here right now just to like look at things once in a while to see what they think to get a reaction. Um, I don't do the mirror thing too much, but it does help. I find all those things helpful. I find like for teaching, I tend to like look at people's or have people look through their camera with a black and white filter on, and it really shows clearly where the values are standing out because we can definitely be distracted by color and think it's a correct value while it's not. So I think any of the tools, the phone does help. I mean, I always take pictures of paintings now when I'm working, so it's always easy to like when I walk away from the painting or I'm sitting in bed to like look at it again and see things that stand out. So maybe nowadays the phone would be the most obvious thing to help me with it. But generally, I can tell something's wrong pretty quickly. I just have to figure out how to fix it. It
Yeah.
just feels uncomfortable, so I got to deal with it.
What is your varnishing preference?
I was really into like doing just an oil, like my medium, like an oil, and hand rub it in layers, as many, like almost like you would finish woodworking, where it's like very thin layers and many passes. And I love the look of like when I was doing that on my darker paintings in the past, like some of the texture of the brush strokes would kind of get rubbed down a little bit. And it's just something you can't get without time. And I always really enjoyed that. Or even using like a wax medium, like buffed into the surface, like a cold wax, similar to like how you'd wax a car. You kind of rub it in and it looks waxy, and then all of a sudden it gets to this shiny spot. And that was a nice finish. I never really loved how the varnishes looked too shiny, but nowadays I just use the shiny varnish because I find it just makes them pop and look rich. So I'm using this stuff, the stuff from Gamblin again, which is what just it's stuff I always used anyway. They call it Gambar, but Gambar is just this Regal Res, which is a you can find online through different conservation sources. Regal Res varnish. So that one's fine. And I was trying to satin for a while, but I just find it like it doesn't. It's just a little dull looking, even when I mix the two together. So now I do just full gloss, and actually have one of my big collectors coming tomorrow, so I can varnish a painting. And I'm just going full glossy on it because I just like how it looks now. And in museums, they're pretty much all glossy. They're just lit well. And that's
Yeah,
the thing.
that's true.
But no Damar. I just don't like the smell of that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What kind of lighting setup do you have in your studio?
Currently, we moved in October of last year, so I didn't haven't like fully set up a studio space. I've definitely set up my shop for working on other things, the knife stuff. I've spent more time in there and working on that. But I use sort of like I was using the softbox kind of light before, like for photography. I like the overhead shop lights with the the modern kind of bright LED tubes that you can get, and with a daylight balance. I think those work fine. I do like just a straight overhead one, but those the lights are in my shop now, and then the more recently I've been using the panel, those like LED panel lights that you can kind of twist warmer and cooler. Very small. They don't take up tons of space. Easy to move around. So I'll use those. But since we moved, I live in a place that has a lot of windows, and it's pretty huge. And so I've been painting by the windows a lot more lately, which I don't love, but I just do it because it's there. I just don't like how much light changes. So I tend to. I've always really been into like a studio that has a set lighting that I can work at night and in the day, and it'll be the same. So the LED panels are the more recent ones, and they work pretty well. But I'm just working by the windows to be lazy, and then it starts getting dark, and I just continue working, and I get frustrated, but I don't grab a light, and then by the morning I'm like, oh, I guess I should have put a light there because now I can see things that I couldn't see when I was working in the dark. So I still feel like I'm in a little bit of a transition period with the studio setup, and when we really get working on this big show, I'm gonna probably have to have like a more dedicated setup.
Yeah. What, if anything, do you listen to as you work?
I mean, I don't. I love podcasts, but I don't listen to them when I'm working too much. Mostly when I'm driving, which I do a lot of. Um, so when I'm working, I'll just put on, whatever kind of music. It used to be just iTunes, and I'd let it just play randomly. And then if a song came on that I felt like listening to that album, then I would just switch to the album. I've been into Spotify a lot more recently, and I don't do too much like classical while painting. I tend to be more of a, I guess, classical rock person, but yeah, all kinds of stuff. There's moments where I'm like maybe like I've worked. a long day and I'm super tired, but I want to keep powering through. And if I listen to some of the music that was I was listening to in college or came out when I was in college, then I like it kind of takes me back to those simpler times for some reason and helps me like power through, past my 8 hour window of painting or something. So yeah, I mean, it really varies. My music choices are all over the place, but nothing too heavy when I'm painting.
Right.
I don't know if that was too broad of an answer, but
No, no, that's fine. So no spoken word, like no podcast, no audiobooks, all music,
yeah,
just
pretty
different
much.
kinds. Yeah.
I enjoy podcasts. I do feel like I don't know if I don't listen to the words as much when I'm painting. I don't find music or things distracting to paint to, but I want to like pay attention to the podcast usually when I'm listening to them. So not
Yeah,
too much
right.
while painting.
How do you name your paintings?
What's one of the things I've always kind of hated was naming paintings, and I also never really loved paintings that had like names that seemed more important than the painting. So I used to keep them very simple, like portrait of blank, whatever. And then, I mean, every once in a while, there's ones that came up like, if I paint the same person, I can't use that title that many times, or can number it or something. But um, there's a few. I'm trying to think of. I don't even remember all the names because sometimes it might just be like I'm specifically thinking of the painting of one of my models that I painted in a jacket, and it was during an era where I was like putting jackets on the models because I didn't want to be the tattooed chick painter, which the gallery told me I was once. So I put everybody
Wow.
in the jackets. So that painting of Natalia wearing or with the snake in it, she was actually wearing long sleeves instead of the tattoos. I was testing out to see what the gallery would say if I did that. I can't remember the name of that painting, but there was another one from that time I called Black Lamb, and the reason I called it Black Lamb was because the girl was wearing a black lamb jacket. It was just made of lamb, and it's just simple and you know useless in some way, but that became the title. And then maybe I don't remember if one of the ones you posted I had named Spoonful of Sugar because there was an umbrella, and I just thought, with Mary Poppins, and that's a silly little name. But yeah, I tend to try and stay away from getting too creative with the names, and it's more of like dry one-liner jokes or just very bland, straightforward, descriptive titles. Who
Oh,
knows?
I think you've just ruined it for people now because the
I know.
names, without your explanation of how simple you came to them, they
Yeah,
actually do sound very vague and mysterious. And oh, is she the lamb? Is she the black sheep of the
yeah,
family? You
exactly.
know, and it's like, oh
Yeah,
no, it's he said it
but
was just because
well,
she's wearing a coat.
yeah, exactly. But that's what I like. That's why I like to. I mean, I guess podcasts are a newer thing, so I like leaving the mystery there for people to make up their own story. I've heard people like say all kinds of things about my paintings. I'm like, oh, okay, that's really deep. That's cool. Go with it. And that's why I will choose things like that. Like Black Lamb definitely could go in a lot of different directions for people. But yeah, I ruined it. It's just straight up. It's a jacket made of black lamb.
Very good.
I'm here to ruin
Dustin
everything.
Dustin J Powers on Instagram says, "Did you ever have difficulty overcoming the leap from doing many studies to more involved illustrative slash contemporary work? And if you did, or you do still, can you contrast some differences that doing those types of work bring?"
I'm not totally sure I understand what that question is. Like
God, I was
keep
hoping
going.
you would because I didn't get it either. I mean, let's see. Over leave doing many studies.
I mean, maybe like
I
studying in school and just studying the model and then working on
Yeah, maybe
developing
yeah.
compositions. I mean, I still do that, like I've done because of teaching, I've done more studies now than I did as a student. I have a room in the back that has like 1,000 portrait paintings in it, probably. And so like I still study, but uh, and I think maybe having gone to school for illustration, I was really pushed early on into like building narrative into paintings and doing things like that. So I keep them separate as ideas, but technically the approaches are the same. It's just measurements and putting it down on the canvas. But I think yeah, it's just like I didn't find any problems like jumping from one to the other, or just in my career trying to develop more story in my paintings because I trained to be actually tell more stories than I really do nowadays, you know. And so I think having studied illustration kind of set me on the path to do that stuff from a younger age or from an earlier time. But I can see where, you know, if you don't have any ideas and you're just like doing studies and you're trying to figure out what should I paint. I mean, paint what you feel like, you know, don't try and make, I would say don't make it, I never wanted to make it too much of a story, just like I was saying with the titles, because I never really liked the idea of like trying too hard. It's just like, I'd rather just be me. If it's a simple thought, then it's a simple painting, and that's fine. Totally okay with me.
And it doesn't sound like you do studies in preparation for a painting either, or do you?
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time. You know, it generally tends to be like the vision is clear and I just go for it. But I'm not trying to like work out studies too much. Like I had said with the grisaille thing, I don't love like overworking an idea too much. So like I'll just go for it and accept it for what it is. But yeah, any of the paintings that have multiple figures or whatever, there's not too many studies. There's a piece I'm trying to get going. It's going to be, and I put some studies out there on the internet that I did of it, a little painted study and then a digital composition, and they're very similar, but and the final piece is going to be very similar to that. But I am doing studies for that and trying to compose. But the reason I'm doing that is there's going to be like 20 figures in it, so I have to do some studies to make sure everything kind of flows right before I get to the 10 by 10 foot canvas I'm planning, and I just don't want to waste time. And the studies will help me, you know, get from A to Z much more quickly without messing around because I like to just get it done.
Right. Now, just on the off chance he's talking about that bit, is there mentally a different approach from when you're doing studies in preparation to when you're actually working on the main painting?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the studies I might put more of my creative energy into, and then the painting will be just more my technical energy, where I just knocking it out, you know, trying to treat it like a job at that point. And it very much is a job to me. I'm not like painting is my job and that's it. And honestly, nowadays, most of the time I paint when I need to pay bills, which is every month. So I'm still painting all the time. I'm still paying my bills, but that's all. I don't do it for fun. So I treat it like a job. So when I'm doing a piece, and if I've done the studies, that's where kind of the fun and play and stress and struggles come in, and then the final piece is where it's just down to, you know, it's the 9 to 5. Get down to work and do it.
Righto. John Ramirez, Monaco in California says, really find your portraits compelling. I notice that you tend to use a dark palette and some of your subjects seem a bit goth or underworldly. I find these subjects and the colours you choose very intriguing. What draws you to this particular colour palette and these particular subjects? Is there a theme or meaning you're trying to convey with this subject matter?
No theme or meaning really, just like I had talked about with the titles too. But you know, in the beginning, I was painting my friends. I just wanted to document my life, and so it's my friends that are maybe underworldly and goth more than me. But as far as art history goes too, like I said, I, you know, love Caravaggio, and there's darkness there. Even Rembrandt's very like dark painting, and so I think even I would say Sargent, besides a lot of his outdoors, his portraits tend to be very dark settings, and
Yeah,
I don't know, it's just like all the things I've been drawn to, and contrast is an easy way to get things to pop. So I guess that's sort of where that comes from, more so than like me being like a really dark person. I wouldn't say I'm not a dark person, but this is one of the rare times where I'm wearing a shirt that's not black. People maybe will see that later if this ever goes up on YouTube, but yeah,
yeah.
my
Sean is
closet's
coming
full
to
of
us from
black.
a dungeon, and he's seems to be in a
Yes.
coffin. In a coffin.
Yeah.
He's recording from a coffin. Yeah, no, he's not. It looks very normal.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
well,
that's
not normal,
definitely,
but just not goth.
yeah, we got some light in here, natural light. There's sun. I'm not melting from the sun. I'm not burning. But yeah, I mean, I do find one of my old instructors did say, like, he was talking about like Satan versus God in art and stuff, and how Satan's more sexy. I guess, I could see that more seductive. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just yeah, I don't know, based on training. It's not that I don't paint bright things too sometimes, and brighter colors. I love color. I'm a fan of all the colors.
All right. Benjamin Lester on Instagram says, I love the unapologetic masculinity in your work, especially your self portraits. Do you consider yourself a masculine person? And how does that influence your artistic choices?
I
And
saw
then he
that
also
question.
says, yeah, how influenced are you by 80s metal music? And if so, what about it inspires you? So
I
let's do the masculinity thing first. They're kind
Yeah,
of
I mean,
linked, but we'll just
yeah, I guess they're kind of linked. I never think of like, me as a man, versus a woman or whatever, any of that. I mean, I just am what I am, I suppose, and I do all these things that I guess some people, maybe especially in the art world, like we had talked about with sports, like being more masculine. Ice hockey is definitely a pretty masculine sport, but it's just one I liked. I liked the challenge of it. It's not like I liked it because it was, tough manly thing. I just liked it's more of the chess game of the sport, and the high speed and all that. And then in painting, like I don't know. I mean, I paint. I don't know if I see that in myself or think about that. I just paint the way I paint and see the way I see, and I like all kinds of paintings and painters, and it's a interesting question that I couldn't really figure out how to dissect because I'm not trying to be masculine or trying not to be masculine, and it's just I am what I am. And I mean, I like pink too. I'm down with some. I'll paint my nails. My son wants to paint nails. I'll paint my nails. Um, I did tend to have a beard a lot of the time, which is the first time in like 10 years I shaved off recently because my son kind of dared me to. I guess that's masculine, but that's more of me just hiding behind stuff because I'm more shy in some ways. And I guess blacksmithing seems masculine because you're smashing hot metal and all that. But I'll play a nice sweet song on guitar too. I like it all, and it's not a conscious thing. So it's a tricky question for me to try and sort of step out of myself and look at myself in that way and break it down or understand. And metal, 80s metal, like I like 80s metal, but I wouldn't say it's like something that inspires my work really at all, even though maybe I don't know if it seems like it does. I don't know if you feel like it does or you've seen it. I mean,
no, I
there's a
thought that was in. He knew something about you. I thought he knew had
yeah,
more
no,
insight, bit of
I did
inside
too. I was like
information.
I was like,
I'd be hard pushed to know what like to name an '80s metal band. What's that like?
yeah, I mean like I mean we could
Ozzy
even like
Osbourne, kind of Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff, is it?
I mean I'm down with some yeah, I mean some of that, maybe
Is
Metallica,
that
they've
from
been
the
around since
'80s?
the 80s,
Yeah,
yeah,
Metallica. Yeah.
still going, but there's probably all kinds of deeper metal. But yeah, no, I mean I like 80s metal for sure, and probably out of all the genres of metal, maybe I like the late 70s and 80s stuff most. Like I like some Sabbath, some stonery metal, or didn't get
Oh,
into like the real heavy like black metal and things like that of more recent years. And
yeah.
so I wouldn't say no, it influences me. I mean, maybe when I think about a few self portraits, I was wearing a Clash shirt, but that's definitely not metal.
No.
I'd be maybe more punk rock than metal,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
maybe more just like classic rock and maybe even a little country sometimes. There's some Johnny Cash shirts that showed up in my paintings, I think.
yeah. Yeah.
So no, I can't really say 80s metal influences my work at all.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if
like
much
this.
music influences it.
Yeah, I like the Stones.
I love the Stones. I'll play some
Fred and
Stones.
Barney.
Yeah, yeah.
It is Fred and Barney, isn't it? Yeah, it is Fred and Barney. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jan Delesso on Twitter says, "Why knives?" And Ted Reitz on Instagram says, "I think you've talked about this before in an interview, but it would be cool to hear your updated input on the topic. Are you mostly forging now or only forging? And if you're doing both painting and forging, how do you like balancing them and how do you do it? Is one mostly a hobby in inverted commas while the other is a job in inverted commas? Look forward to hearing your thoughts. You're an inspiration."
All right. Well, thank you guys for those. Why knives? Because I like them, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of boys end up liking knives as kids. Also, I think most humans, if you ever get in the kitchen and cook, you have to use knives. So I think sometimes people, I've had comments like, "Oh, I'm scared of you because of knives." It's like, well, do you cut vegetables? I mean, they're just one of the oldest tools behind like a blunt tool. Like a, first was a rock, and then there was a sharp rock, and so I think it's a very handy tool that everybody uses. If you get packages from Amazon, do you open them? Um, so those kinds of things, like, I mean, they're handy. I mean, I use knives that I make in the kitchen. I use knives to open boxes, like I talked about, and I make knives that are art pieces. I use knives now because I live out in nature, and I have to chop wood and do things like that. And like, it's a tool. A very old tool that is very handy in life. But as a boy, I did grow up going to like the mall with my family, and my dad and I and my brothers would go to the knife store. It's just something, I think, I don't know if it's just an American thing or just boys in general. I'm reading this Caravaggio biography right now, and that guy loved knives and swords. I think it's just, part of human nature in some ways. And then I've been interested in like the Japanese sword making for a long time, and at one point I'd gone to Sweden and ended up just visiting a knife maker by chance, and I thought, well, my interest was back in there. So sort of like just seeing how little tools it took. So I started researching some blacksmithing classes in LA, and I signed up for one, and it was so fun. And it wasn't a knife; it was making a hook, a barn hook, and I just loved this new, for me, art form, a very old art form. I liked the struggle of like being a student of something. Not that I'm not always a student of painting too, but I've just been at it for a long time. And so I got into doing that, and yeah, I just the knives are a fun thing to make for me because of all that. Actually, when I was a teenager, my uncle, who was a general contractor, my mom's brother, I used to work for him, and do all that stuff. But we were trying to make swords and chainmail, and I was going, I'd go to the Renaissance fairs and things like that. I just had interest in all that stuff for a long time. But when I could finally found out like how I could actually do it, and with social media and the internet and YouTube and things like that, you can learn anything nowadays at home. So I just got obsessed with it. I think because painting is my job, I needed a new hobby. I've been playing music a long time, and that was something I did. But I even did that kind of a lot for a while, where maybe I burned out, and I just started blacksmithing, and then the more I did it, the more obsessed I got, and I definitely do it as much as I can. And my nightstand currently has like 3 or 4 knives in progress sitting on it, so I can like figure out what to do next. But no, I'm definitely not just forging. I'll do it as much as I can, but I still, like I said earlier, have to pay my bills, and I do that through my painting. And so I'm painting, and it's my job. But because of how much money I need to make just to survive out here in California and support the people I do, I have to still do a lot of painting uh, for the money, and there's not a lot of energy left for painting for fun for me. So I have something that changes gears for me completely. It's very physical. I don't break a sweat painting unless I'm screwing up and I'm just getting nervous. But working on knives, like, it's very physical blacksmithing. It's hot and it's physical, and so it's just different. Maybe it's I haven't been playing ice hockey for the last few years, so maybe it's my new form of just exercise. But mentally it's different, physically it's different, and I like every day using knives that I get to make in the kitchen, or whatever, and it's fun. It's a fun art form.
Do you collect knives as well?
I do collect knives, and I've spent a few bucks on some over the years, and collected from some amazing makers, some guys that are have titles of master smiths and journeyman smiths, and other guys that don't but are just as good. And it's a beautiful art form what people do nowadays. I mean, like you've seen with Alex Steele and some of the stuff he's made. Like, there's wonderful pieces of art in the knife making world. And so yes, I've collected some, but for study and just because I like it. But now I kind of focusing more on just making all the things I want to make, and the types of knives are. Of course, I'd love to get into making some swords for fun because I've liked those, but it's just like really the gear. You need bigger everything to make swords, and I don't. I'm more set up to do the smaller things currently.
Yeah.
I made it, and I'll make anything. I mean, I was thinking more about jewelry too because my father was a jeweler, and I grew up around
Mm.
that. And I didn't have the interest as a kid, and I could have like taken over his shop, but I didn't because I just didn't care. But now I wish I would have because I pretty much have been buying a bunch of the tools he has. I've got a jewelry bench for engraving in one of these rooms, and now I'm starting to do the engraving. So I'm trying to make more decorative parts to knives and make kind of doing, and which is cool for me because the engraving now is bringing the drawing and the knife making together into kind of one thing where I'm drawing first and then putting it onto metal, and so it's all connected to me. It's just like there's too many things for me to want to learn in this life, and I look at people recently. I've been seeing a lot of people online who just like they do the one thing and they paint, and I think, wow, that's amazing. If I would have stuck with painting more and just kind of focused on it, maybe I would have been in a different place than I am. And like, but we're jumping between guitars and engraving and digital painting and blacksmithing, and it's like my focus is a little all over the place. Not that I don't focus on everything 100%, but I think it's like I'm starting to feel that like I'm feeling the clock ticking a little bit now. I'm in my mid 40s, and my son's almost a teenager, and it's I think I'm just starting to feel a little bit of that like I got to do all this stuff. I have too many. Like I know I'll die with a thousand unfinished projects, and so like I think that feeling is starting to hit me where I just need to focus a little more maybe on some things, but I'm not going to be doing less, but I think maybe I won't take on any new hobbies just yet.
Yeah, well, Leonardo, you'll just be like Leonardo. He died with like many, many unfinished work.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think about that like with my father because he retired from jewelry making, and like he retired maybe 10 years ago, and he's no projects left, and it's different, and where I feel like I'll never run out of projects and things I want to do, and
Hmm.
I don't know if one is better than the other, but it is what it is for me.
Yeah.
I'll just
Well, I
make.
think I think you, as you get older, you're better off to take on bigger and bigger projects.
Yeah, why not? Nothing to lose. Just got to do it.
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, God, I'm really enjoying this podcast. I've listened to a few now and they're brilliant. And there's so many of them. And I've learned so much from listening to them. And you know what? If I met that John Dalton fella in real life, I'd love to buy him a cup of tea and have a chat with him. I'd love to do that every month if I could. Well, now you can. The tea part at least, because this podcast runs on cups of tea bought for me by people like you who listen to the podcast and send me the price of a cup of tea once a month through the Patreon account. That's patreon.com/John Dalton Gently Does It. All one word. And if you're one of those people who already send me cups of tea through Patreon, thanks a million. The tea is lovely and I really appreciate it. Now, the great thing is that if you can't afford to send me the price of a cup of tea or you don't want to, that's fine. You still get exactly the same podcast for free. It's sort of an honor system where the people who can afford it and want to pay for the people who can't or don't want to. So it's all lovely. So if you'd like to send me a cup of tea once a month, you can do that through Patreon. I'd really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference to me.
I want to write like a screenplay for a Caravaggio movie because I feel like there needs to be a really good movie on him, um, or maybe a series because the stories are so loaded with just interesting stuff that like, and having just been around Rome a lot and in the
Mm.
churches and seeing all that stuff, the more I learn, the more I want to see it on screen. So that is something I'm kind of toying with and then studying and reading right now to try and put that together.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd get Hollywood to make it though, because he is fundamentally not a very likable character.
I mean, there's plenty of not likable things in Hollywood movies, but yeah, he's definitely was a terrible person.
Yeah, it's very hard to sell that the central character is the not the nice guy.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's not. But he's
Have you
very
listened to?
important.
He's very important.
Yeah, in art history, I think.
Oh yeah. Have you listened to Arthol's podcast where on his
That's the one
series
that
on
inspired me.
Caravaggio?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great,
absolutely.
isn't
That
it?
one has inspired me to like dig deeper. So I'm reading those biographies that he mentioned. And this year we went to Porto Ercole where he died and saw like where he was buried. And then we found out while we were there that there was a tomb of his bones because I thought they'd just be in a lab still after they had dug them up. But we got there late at night on our bicycles and it was closed. So we kind of hopped over the fence to go check out the tomb. It was very exciting, like being a child again, jumping
Yeah,
into a cemetery in a small town in Italy. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing story. The Art Holes one, like really was really dug deep and I loved it so much. I've listened to that one probably 3 times now or 4 times.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot to
Is
remember.
is that the one where the first hour is all about it starts off with the birth of Christ and finishes with the birth of Caravaggio. There's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
about
exactly.
Caravaggio. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
wild.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
just Christianity.
Context.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. At first, I just like I try to tell people when that I tell to listen to it, just hang in there for the first one. It's important.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he does the same on the Frida Kahlo one. He just,
Yeah, I think I started that. I've started all the other ones, but haven't like finished. And I know he's just started another one too on
Toulouse-Lautrec.
Toulouse-Lautrec, I think.
Yeah, yeah. No, the Frida Kahlo one's very good. Very good. I
Yeah,
learned a
yeah,
lot
cool.
from that one. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, got some
The Jackson
long
Pollock one
drives.
is hard.
Yeah,
It's a hard story, hard life, and hard listen.
yeah, yeah. I'll give it a try.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's your most prized knife in your collection?
Oh my gosh, that's hard. I don't really know if I have one. Somebody asked me like, "What's your favorite painting?" And it's the same kind of thing. Or what's your favorite song? I'm like, I can't really. I don't do favorites. I don't think.
Okay.
I because I just there's too many things about all the ones I have. Probably, I'm trying to think of which ones you know, maybe my most prized piece is a katana I got from the 1700s that my dad's friend traded me for a painting when I was younger, and that's kind of what maybe got me into the whole thing. So let's just say that one is one I
What's a katana?
it's like the samurai sword, the
It's the
long
full
sword.
sword. It's not the short
Yeah, the
one.
full. Yeah, yeah. So there's like the three sizes, and that was and I got that, when I was pretty young, and carried that with me, and it's really cool to think about the history of it and see, like, you can see it's been worn and it's polished and everything, but there's a history to it just because of like the amount of polishing it's been through and things like that. And so maybe I would say that one if I was going to pick one as far as a blade
Mm.
goes.
Mm. Are they as sharp as they're,
Yeah,
here?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And like all the legends of what that steel can cut iron and stuff. It's true, like and when I'm making knives, I test them like kind of brutally. I'll test them on all kinds of things and make sure like they can cut. Like you can properly heat treat something to make it cut through metal pretty easily if you're doing it
Mm.
right. And so yeah, they knew what they were doing. They were figuring it all out, I guess, back then. And yeah, I mean, I don't use this one at all. I keep it locked up, but it's not really. Yeah, when they polish it, polishing in the Japanese sword world is sharpening. So they're polishing the surface while it's sharpening the edge at the same time. Where
Mm.
we tend to like sharpen the edge as a separate thing in Western knives and stuff. But yeah, I make sure somebody had asked me online, like, how sharp are those knives? I'm like, I don't know what kind of question that is, other than like super sharp. I mean, the whole point of the knife, like all my knives in
Yeah.
the house are sharp because that's what they're for. I can't stand a dull knife unless it's for butter.
Yeah. Arthur Gain in Barcelona and former podcast guest, episode 239, if you're looking for it, says, would love to ask Sean how blacksmithing is influencing his painting practice and how painting philosophy is affecting the process and result of making knives.
I mean, I think blacksmithing doesn't necessarily influence my painting practice. I might be doing some stuff themed in that soon just because I like it, the firelight and maybe, whatever. And but I don't know if it really influences it too much. I've definitely forged some palette knives for myself, which are fun. and maybe it influences it physically because my hands hurt all the time, and I'm like constantly icing my hands every night just to make sure they work for being able to hold brushes. Um, but maybe the other way around, like painting and drawing influences knives, because with knives there's still design and flow, and it's not just a crude tool. It can be a very artistically beautiful, symmetrical thing, and should be. And so like I do a lot of drawing and looking at lines and making sure things are straight and centered and whatnot. So I'd say my artistic um, years of studying drawing and painting definitely helped my knife designing, and I think gave me a little head start over some people who are more just the craft based in knife making, where I can actually put down maybe colors and textures and flowing lines and things in a different way. Once I've learned started to learn more about the functionality of what you need for knives and guards and all the different angles and bevels that you're creating. So I think in some way it gives me that, painting and drawing gives me that, but not vice versa. I think it takes away a little bit. It's like all these things I do are putting my eyes and hands at risk all the time.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. Richard Johnson on Patreon, thanks for the tea. Richard says, "Thank you, John, for this amazing podcast." You're welcome. And Sean for answering our questions. Have loved your work for years, Sean. Your paintings are beautifully executed and portray what feels like such generous slices of life. I've often heard from galleries and people in general that buyers won't buy paintings of random people, whatever that means in brackets. I quite enjoy painting random people and don't plan to change what I like to do. Besides, unless you're doing celebrity portraits, aren't all people in paintings random? I'm just wondering if you've run into this odd criticism as well in your art journey. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I definitely have come across that. I just, in the beginning, like I was saying, I just wanted to paint my friends. So, as random as they were my personal diary of my life. And so, I think if they're well done, I mean, some of that stuff, most of the stuff I had out there in the beginning sold. Maybe the economy was good, and people didn't care that they were random. Maybe they felt me in there. Maybe they were willing to buy paintings of random people, but I've definitely heard that, and I've heard that through galleries. I do find nowadays like self portraits are sort of an easy sell, and because maybe they're not random, it's like collectors even want your signature on the piece, and that's like the ultimate signature piece, your face in there too. But yeah, that's true. I do think there's that, somewhat that, especially if it's posed as a portrait, it's just a face or head and shoulders or a bust. Once I started doing more people in settings and adding the environments, or maybe turning people away from the camera, or just maybe not making eye contact, they became more, I guess, what you could call figurative instead of portraits. Um, but it just depends on, do you want to cater to what's sellable, or do you want to just paint what you want to paint and paint what you feel? And I think there's always a balance there. If you make it your living, if you need to make money, then and you can't sell anything, then you can't do it as your living. So there's always a little bit of a compromise with working, in some sort of art market. Um, I've had, because I was the tattooed chick guy, which I just hated that so much. So that's why I started putting jackets on. And then I started, and I still have had galleries, not using that term, but just saying they want more of the females with tattoos and edgy females or whatever. Then that makes me want to not do it. I'm just like, I'm more of a, I guess, rebellious in that way. And there's even like a time where I was like, I had a waiting list for paintings of a specific model of mine because people just liked how she looked. And that just, I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't make me want to do it now. It's not like from me anymore. So I stopped doing it a little bit. And then, of course, I'm not selling, but like, it's just me being stubborn and not, it's just it's like I could have just kept doing it and making money. But the same thing with like painting males versus females. I think people say it's easier to sell paintings of females than males, maybe to have a random one on the wall. But and I've found that somewhat true in my experiences, where like I did one show where I put in only paintings of my male friends, but it was like what I wanted to paint. It was like me and my buddies and stuff we were up to, and some of my favorite paintings I've done, and they're still in my collection, and that's fine because they're still my favorite paintings, and I get to live with them. And so I'd rather, do that, I suppose, and live with the paintings myself and feel proud of them than maybe doing it the other way and just kind of cheapening it by just making it a money thing. But it's a balance, and you got to make money, and that's where teaching was good for me because I could kind of make money doing studies, and then every once in a while you sell studies. The paintings of random people in that sense, like the portrait studies, tend to be sold to more people who are interested in painting or learning painting themselves, and they don't care what the person is; they care what the painting's like. So yeah, there's a it's always a balance for me, I guess, everything, and I don't know. I've had that experience for sure.
Very good. Chris Clamp on Patreon says, Chris Clamp on Patreon, thanks for the tea, Chris, says, thanks so much for this conversation. I've been a huge fan of Sean's work for many years, and I always love hearing his insight. Sean, could you please tell us a little about how you have forged your own path? I'm not sure if that was a pun there intended.
Mm.
From teaching to showing at galleries. You've always maintained a high level of control, and I find that inspiring.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I've actually. It's all an illusion. I don't know if I'm on the right path. I don't know if I've forged a path. I think most people who are on social media sort of curate how their life looks, and I'm always never sure if I'm on the right path or if I'm headed the right direction or if I'm on the path I want to be on. I would love to be like super successful right now, just to honestly to retire. I keep telling people this. Maybe I'm trying to manifest retiring. Retiring for me would be so I can just focus on making whatever I want to make, and I've always done for the most part mostly what I wanted to do. Um, but you do have to bend to what you need to do sometimes, and I teaching is one of those things that's been it's is always there for me and constant, and can be something that makes money for me. I think because I've been doing it so long, and people seem to like how I teach. So I think it's that's if I ever need to focus on just making money, like I can teach and do that thing. In the beginning of teaching, I would have to take time off, but and then there was a period in my life, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, where teaching became my main thing, and I got tired of showing in galleries. Like when the economy's bad and the gallery paintings aren't selling, then but people still take classes. People always want to learn. It's relatively cheaper than buying art, and selling art is one of those weird things where it's like your art is just for it's mostly for rich people. It's for people who have expendable income. It's not a necessity. It's nothing. I'd say teaching is more of a necessity for or learning is more of a necessity for people than buying art, and so it is more affected by the economy and just my own stubbornness or working with galleries or whatever. So I don't know if I'm on the right path, but the path for me is always like doing what I feel like first, doing what I have to, maybe second, maybe in line with first sometimes in the months. And but currently I'm so all over the place. I don't know where I'm headed or what's next. Um, so yeah, I would say I don't know if I'm on the right path, but I just stick to what I know and what I like and do it, and even with all the new things I'm learning, I go 100%, at the time. Obviously, I have to divide my time, but I'm really I can be very focused, hyper focused on things when I want to be. So there's that, just that obsessive compulsive behavior. Like haven't even talked about it, but I love baking and making pizza and all that, and baking sourdough bread, and like I really study it a lot. And there was a point where my Instagram like suggestion feed was just loaves of bread as you scroll, just tons of loaves. So like, and that showed me how much I was like obsessing about it and just trying to learn and get better, and I still am.
The only people who seem to do exactly what they want are YouTubers. You notice
Yeah,
that? Like they just, if they have a thing for one thing, they'll do that, and then because they're the product, I suppose, or the brand, and then it
yeah.
doesn't really matter what they do. So
Yeah, I really,
I think from that perspective, you're primed to be a great YouTuber.
I admire that, and I think about it like, but I just can't and I think about I'm not really like a good at being like maybe a personality in front of a camera, but like there's so many things I do that I would love to share with people like a daily, look into what I'm working on. But at the same time, like I'm not gonna sit. There's so many times I'm sitting in front of a lathe working on something, and then I'm like, well, I should be recording this, but I'm not going to stop and record. I'm working on it. I need all the time to work on it. So I'm not going to stop and record. I'm not going to edit it. Like I don't do all that stuff, unfortunately, but I think it would be fun to be able to share it. And I look, the YouTube channels I love, I think I could put out some interesting content, but it's a whole new thing for me to learn. I don't have the time or energy to be a personality and a videographer and a film editor and all that. And I guess maybe a team of people could do it, but I don't have that team of people to do it.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a whole other. I've made a few little videos for different things, and it does take the joy out of it a little bit because you're
Yeah,
having to
but
think of it from the perspective of the video you're going to make as well. So everything
yeah,
is the flow of everything is interrupted,
yeah, and
and
that to
it's
me is
and
huge. That
yeah, and it
flow,
can feel very contrived,
right?
like for
Yeah, and
every
I don't like that.
yeah, like for every shot like you see of somebody talking to the camera, and then you happen to see them. They're still talking to the camera, but it's kind of far away, and you can see their whole body. They will have
Yeah,
had to stop, go over, put the camera over there, pretend they're talking. It's kind of
yeah,
bullshitty.
yeah. And every angle, like I love good videos where it's like every angle of somebody
Yeah,
working. But I just can't I can't even do one angle. I'm like my phone's in my pocket, my hands are busy. So if I had somebody that just followed me around doing it, I could do it maybe, but otherwise
yeah,
it's just not going to happen. I'm just going to be more private and make things.
yeah,
My
yeah,
my girlfriend, she's a professional artist too. She's been doing Patreon videos and YouTube videos, and it's like she's doing really well with it. But I'm just like, oh my god, it looks like so much work, and she's getting good at
yeah.
it, and I'm watching her do it. And she's offered to help me a bunch, but I just like I don't even I can't even stop to ask for help. I'm just like, sorry, I'm making it, and now it's done. So I missed that opportunity to film it. So I'll just keep
Yeah.
putting it out, like even social media. It's hard for me to keep up with posting, and definitely I came into that late and with resistance, and like just like from the Rome trip, I didn't even like, take any good pictures of my demos until I got home. So now I'll start posting about it. But in the past, I would have had to post every day and do it, and I didn't post one picture while I was gone. I was just focusing on the trip and working, and enjoying myself when I was enjoying myself, and working when I was working.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, are you purposely not saying who your girlfriend is, or is it
No,
okay to mention?
Kate Zambrano.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah,
brilliant.
she's great. It's been really nice, like being in a relationship and having this like team and working on stuff together. And she's in the four-person show that we're doing in the Dark Western show. So we're gonna get started on all those pieces. And the other two people in the show are my good friends, Jeff Nentrup and Sonia Palencia, who live next door to us, actually, in this area on the edge of the woods. So we moved out here because they knew the neighbors and we knew them, and they were looking for somebody to rent, and I was looking to get out of LA. So we took this house next door for rent, and now we're going to work on a show together and see how that goes. It should be really fun.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to school with those two also, so I've known them a long time. So it's been fun, having a little quiet community out here on the edge of the forest, but like with some good friends next door. Next door
Yeah.
being like a quarter mile up the road or something. I don't know. It's like kind of a 20-minute walk to get to their house, even though they're the next door neighbors.
Yeah. 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 No, I'm in a very similar situation.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, Chris also had. He said, also, could you tell us if your son has taught you a few things?
Oh, yes, absolutely. He teaches me all the time. He's been an amazing artist since he could hold a pencil, and he always held it, not like a child, like a holding a crayon, like they're trying to stab something, but he always had the delicate touch, and he's been an amazing inspiration for sure. Like I don't teach him. I don't try to push him to do art. If he wants to do it, he does it. But um, he lives with his mother in Northern California, and like he would fill up sketchbook after sketchbook more than my students. Like he just put in the time, and he's always been a natural talent too. So um, a few times he'll want to oil paint, and I have to set him up because of the technical stuff. But then I'll just leave him alone once I set him up. And one time he did this Caravaggio copy where he left the ground, the white ground of the linen canvas. The highlights were just white, like the board. And I preached to never use pure white in paintings and highlights and things because of what I learned. And the way he did it as just like blank canvas, it was so glowing and amazing to me that like I started doing that in paintings and stealing that idea from him. And so I've done that a few times recently, and it's just like amazing what kind of intuitive things kids have going for them sometimes. And to kind of get away from my own sort of education and years of teaching and all the rules and everything that I feel like that have been instilled in me and I instill upon other people. And it's huge, like having him around for that sort of feeling and to just remember like the gut feeling you have with painting and drawing and what to do. And some of the other stuff he's taught me is just like technically like digital with the iPad. He's such an amazing, like the youth now with their ability to move through iPads and tablets is crazy. So when I need something in Procreate, how to do something, how to do a mask, or how to like you know, um, anything with just the technical stuff, he kind of knows how to figure it out quickly. He figured out the animation so quickly and showed me how to do it in Procreate. So yeah, always learning from him.
That's lovely. Did you like often when there's a woman artist on and they have children? There'll be a question about how do you balance parenthood and being a mother. Never get it when there's a man, but how did you do that? Like practically, did you find it difficult or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think just raising a child's difficult, you know, I mean, I don't know if if I did it well or have done it well or not. I try and with him especially, like I try to just I have trouble saying no to things. So like if he wants to do stuff, I'll do it and I'll sacrifice and I'll just work later or whatever. But who knows? I mean, in the beginning, it probably I wasn't good at balancing it, and maybe that's why his mother lives in Northern California and I live down in Southern California, and we're no longer married, and you know I wouldn't. It's not on him. I don't know if it's just parenting or whatever, or just life and changes and people growing as well. But I uh, I don't know. It's a hard balance. In more recent years, like when he comes to visit and he spends time, like during over the Christmas holiday, I had to like I was building a custom chess set for someone, and I had to work. Like it was break for him, and I just had to work. But I still said, every day we can go to the skate park for a couple hours, and I just made the time to do it with him, and I made the time to do my work, and I stayed up late and worked late. And a few nights he stayed up late with me working and helping me like work on the chess set too a little bit. So it's always a balance, I think. But like no matter what, I have to make sacrifices. And I drive to see him every 2 weeks, and it's a far drive. It's a 6 hour drive each way, and that I can't work during, and I don't work much when he's here. I just kind of cram it in when he's gone. And I'll do some stuff when he's here, or if I absolutely have a deadline, then I have to. But I really want to like put in as much time with him as I can and do the things he wants to do. So I'm playing basketball now all the time, which I don't care much about basketball, and I hadn't played for 30 years, but he wants to play basketball, so we're playing basketball, going to the park, getting sunburnt. And the other day I just bought him a little portable basketball hoop. So there was a compromise there, like so we can do it outside instead of driving down to the basketball courts. But yeah, I think it's a balance. I know like he's more important than art and even than money. So but balance, always balance. And I think because I've trained to work quickly, I can do it easily. I can take some time off, and like this next set, he's going to go home for a couple weeks, and I have a lot of things on my list, and I'm going to knock them all out. The jobs first that pay, and then the fun stuff that I have in my mind next. Do as much as I can until he comes back.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Sonia Vasquez in Wisconsin says, "Hello to you both." Hello, Sonia. Sean, will you potentially do an online workshop on your indirect painting? I've seen your Alla Prima one with East Oaks, and it was super informative. Thanks.
Yes, well, thank you. And I do have plans to do that. That painting I was talking about with the 10 foot 20 figures. I was hoping I could do that as a video somehow. And just I've been working with these guys they go by No Wave, Yoshino and Justin. They're
Mm-hmm.
great, and I've done a few videos with them too. And I love how they shoot things. And I've gotten a little look into kind of the editing and the shooting and things through them. But luckily, I just get to be me, and they just shoot it. Even though we might have to repeat like me walking in or something, but um, we have talked about somehow trying to film that as a piece, but for that, I'd really have to do a lot of planning. I'd have to, I can't have them coming to my place to shoot for like 100 hours of painting. It just seems logistically impossible. So well, I'm trying to work that one out right now, and maybe I could do a smaller one too. But currently, that's in the plans, and it's not just a small one; it's a huge one. So we're just having to work that out. But I used to teach that in the classes too, the indirect painting when I was teaching full time, and I think it's very beneficial for students to see different ways of getting an image from your mind onto a canvas. And so I'll figure it out. We'll try and do it and see what we can come up with. But I don't know. I've never painted 20 figures in a 10 by 10 foot, but I think I can knock it out in a decent amount of time if I plan.
Very, yeah, very good. Um, I thought I knew what indirect painting was, but from hearing you talk, maybe I don't. Can you explain it?
I mean, I guess indirect would be like just like where alla prima might be your painting at once, one sitting. Indirect would just be doing layers, painting in
Oh,
layers, and
okay. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But I don't paint in a lot of layers. But if I do that, I will be for that video. I'll go over how I design the iPad stuff and how I compose things, and I'll show some of the photography and then I'll show how I get it onto the canvas, and then I'll show how I paint it. It still might be the painting part itself might be pretty direct, each figure may be wet into wet, but I would say there's a good chance I'll have to add layers to it. So I think that the underpainting and stuff like that, I guess, would make it the indirect painting.
Yeah, right. Zeta on Instagram says, uh, she's a couple of questions. One, was there a moment in your painting journey where you thought, wow, I know how to paint?
Um, Maybe there's been a few moments here and there, but the other day I was like, wow, I don't know how to paint. So, um, I remember being in school. I remember starting oil painting. I still remember the first time trying oil painting and thinking, what the hell is this? Like, it was a mess. I didn't understand it. And I had done watercolors. That's what I started with, was like almost photorealistic watercolor. And the guy that taught me that was, I don't know, he was a great teacher and laid it out with all these different techniques. And I was able to do things like that people still look at nowadays and think, well, that's a painting. But that was just a technical stuff. And then starting oil painting was just a mess and tricky. And I remember the struggles and almost like feeling like I don't even want to try doing that. And then I remember like feeling like okay with it, feeling maybe a little overconfident with it, but then not liking how the brush strokes looked and the style part of it, and really trying to focus on that. And then kind of grasping that, I felt like comfortable for a while. And then there's a point where I started teaching right out of school, and then you start feeling like you don't know anything again because you're having to share the information or teach someone the information. And so I think it goes in waves. I think each step I know more, but when there's kind of the more you know, the less you know in some way too. So like I said the other day, I just had a moment like, did I forget how to paint? Did I never know how to paint? Like, what's going on? And I think I was just, forgetting to be calm and rely on what I knew and how I knew how to do it. So
Yeah.
I think you should. I think there's always a like. I don't love when people say, "Oh, I know how to do that," or it's just like at some point, like you have to. I don't think I'll ever know how to do it. I'm always pushing to get better at it, and I think that's the only way to grow as an artist, and technically and maybe mentally, and I don't feel like I know anything. I'm constantly learning and trying to just be a better version of it. So I
Yeah.
definitely don't know everything or anything, and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I
They
know
talk
I
about that
know
a
what
lot
I
in
know.
Zen, beginner's mind, how to cultivate a
Yeah,
beginner's
yeah, and
mind.
I think that's important. I think it's super important.
Yeah. I know for myself, I mean, I'm just, like you would do, run the questions through my own thing. I never think that I know how to do anything. Like, but certainly with painting, it's always like if I manage to get to the end of the painting and I'm happy with it, that's it. you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And who knows what the end is too? Like I never know when I'm done. Like I don't feel like there's a finishing point. There's just a stopping point.
Oh no, I get a very clear stop.
You do?
I do, yeah. And it'll
Okay,
be
that's
like,
good.
but, no, stop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I tend to overwork it all the time. I think I go too far because I just don't
yeah,
know. I get that question a lot, like how do you know when to stop? And it's like I don't, it's like the deadline's up and I got to deliver the piece usually, but yeah, I don't know. I look back sometimes I look back and think, oh, okay, I like what I did. I like where I stopped. And sometimes I have to look back at like the photo I took at the progress stage and say, well, I wish I would have stopped there instead. That's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. It's all part of the game, I think.
The second part of Zeta's second question is: do you ever run out of ideas and get stuck in the "what do I paint" in brackets or in inverted commas phase? And any recommendations for those who do?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I think somebody asked like, why don't we see paintings from you anymore? And it's because maybe I like did a lot. I've done too many. I've run out of some ideas, but um, uh, I mean, luckily I have so many other hobbies that like I just go pick up something else, and like that will create some space for me to come back to the other thing and give me more inspiration in other ways. But absolutely, I mean, ideas are hard to come by sometimes, and there's so many things out there in the world with like the movies and literature and art. Like it's just an oversaturated world with ideas and images and visuals that I think like it's hard to feel original. It's hard to like have maybe your own ideas because we're constantly flooded with other people's ideas. So um I never, I'm not a good reader like I talked about, and I don't really read much, but like I'm finding like I want to read more because I think the words, like hearing or just reading words, can help my mind maybe create their own visuals a little more than maybe just like looking at stuff all day, scrolling through your phone and just looking. But I don't know. I also find like so much inspiration online and even just in social media. Like I love looking at paintings and tattoos and drawings and knives and bread and pictures of pizza. I get there's always something inspiring nowadays, but it can be overwhelming. I find and then it's just like you can't even then kind of maybe figure out your own ideas. And I've been studying like scroll design and all the acanthus leaves and everything, and like I'm like obsessing about it and studying it so much. And then I sit down to draw and I'm like, I I don't even know what I'm doing now. Like I'm lost. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's good sometimes to just step back and have a cocktail, forget about it for a bit.
Okay, look, I've had a brilliant idea, but I don't want to trigger your stubborn bone. Okay, I don't want you to kind of go, no, he said that, so I'm not going to do it. But what about, right? You were talking about the Caravaggio movie, and your original interest in storyboarding. What about the next exhibition or your next show after the dark Western one is like paint paintings of the panels of the storyboard for the movie that would be made, and you make accompanying knives and swords, Caravaggio knives and swords to go with it.
No, I love it. Those all those ideas are actually kind of in there somewhere. Like I've really wanted to do some knives in shows, and I was asked to be in a show next, I think in October, and I'm like, you know what? I'll be in it, but can I put a knife instead of a painting? So I'm starting that a little bit, and I did put a knife in a small show, but I've wanted to figure out how to do that, and I've actually started to think about. I've started to research what types of knives or swords Caravaggio, would have carried, and I'm planning on making some, maybe engraving his initials or some of the themes engraved with him in there. So yeah, it's all there. And I think like I do have to kind of design the storyboards, but I like the idea of painting them out. That'd be pretty cool. I've also been like my son and I posed for some pictures like of a beheading of like a David and Goliath we did before, and so I've been thinking about some of those images. Yeah, no, I like that idea. That's pretty right on par with where I'm headed. So I won't
Oh
resist
yeah,
this time.
good. I could kind of see it, the paintings and then little glass cases in front,
Yeah, I think
like
it'd
a
be great.
museum thing with like the swords,
Definitely,
and
yeah. And then I'll have to bring
daggers.
some directors and producers to see the show, and that's my pitch.
Yeah, get George Lucas in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could try. I know a handful of those guys just through having lived in LA for so long and done some work for
Yeah, I think you'd
some
have to
big
get an
time people.
Italian director, though, wouldn't you? Really.
Yeah, I was kind of
They
debating. Does it go like actually Italian, or does it just go like let's get Johnny Depp and have him his comeback? Like
Yeah,
a
right. Yeah.
real, like
Have
practically
you
a
seen?
pirate.
I've been watching. What's it called? The New Pope with Jude Law.
I didn't
An
watch it,
Italian.
but I've heard it's pretty good.
It is. It's really nice to look at, and he's an Italian director. He'd do a great job on it because
Okay.
he has a very contemporary, edgy vibe on the Vatican. He makes it kind
Yeah.
of rock
Yeah.
starish.
Cool.
Particularly the
Okay.
opening. There's the opening sequence where the Pope, Jude Law as the Pope, is walking by all these classic paintings, and there's a meteor going through them, and
Oh, cool.
like,
Okay.
yeah, and
Yeah, I have
it's
to
a
check it
really
out.
really strong rock and guitar riff under it. Just really good. It's a
Oh,
great
wow.
opening
Okay. Yeah,
sequence.
yeah. I'll
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
use that for some inspiration. I always
Yeah, it's
need new
very good.
shows to watch.
Oh yeah, that's really good. There's two series. The first one is very good. The second one's not as good, but it does have some good visuals.
Okay. Cool. Good to know.
David Vecht in Canada says, "Hey Sean, I've been a fan of yours for years. I wondered if you have any specific goals for the future when it comes to painting."
Just constantly learning, doing those big things like I talked about, the shows, this Caravaggio show now. Those are the only plans. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love the Western stuff, and I'm trying to explore that a little bit. And I did for a while, and then I kind of backed off. It's There's multiple reasons why I was interested and why I maybe backed out of it too a little bit. But living out here, on the edge of the woods with just a kind of almost a ranch type of setting, like it's a lot of landscape and nature to be inspired by, and I don't have like, I guess I don't actually have as many painting plans as I do like a list of knives and armor that I want to make. But maybe then once I make those, they'll get into the paintings too. But yeah, I mean, the biggest plan right now is that 10-footer. It might not make it into the Dark Western show just based on sheer size of it and the fact that it's a group show. But that's the one that's been brewing for a few years now, and it's actually based on a relief sculpture I saw in Rome a few years back, where just like the bodies are kind of crawling over each other. So I do want to take a lot of the themes I've seen in the religious works and translate them into kind of an American West thing in some way. Give me permission to be a little violent with it, since the church was all for plenty of violence and dark subject matter.
Drama.
Drama, yes. Humans love drama.
Well, the church loved drama.
Church
Particularly
really love drama.
terrifying. This is
Oh
what's
my
going to
God.
happen if you don't
Yeah.
stay on the path
Did you
that
ever have
leads
any
to
religion in
our
your
door.
life?
Oh yeah, I was raised as a Catholic.
Okay, me too. Same. I was altar boy and all that.
Yeah, I was an altar boy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we actually had a lot of Irish Catholic people in our neighborhood growing up in
Yeah,
the
well,
church.
it's like, Ireland was predominantly Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that from kindergarten through graduating high school.
I lasted till I was about 14, 13 or
If I had the
14.
choice, I would have. Around 14, 15, I was trying to get my parents to let me go to the public school just to hang out with my friends. But well, my other option was I wanted them to send me to the East Coast to go to like a prep school to play hockey. Those were the two things I wanted to do that I didn't do.
Oh well, what I mean is that the that's when I stopped going to mass, or when I
I mean, we kind of had to. There was no choices, I guess. Then, like my when I played football, we had to go to mass before games. I never understood. I didn't care, but like it was part of the school because of the school we had to go.
yeah. Wow, that's we didn't. Well, I didn't play in football teams, so I'm pretty sure they didn't have to go to mass though before
Yeah,
in
it's kind of
Ireland.
weird. Such a weird thing. Like pray no one gets hurt or something. I don't know what they're praying for. Pray that you
Praying
win,
for the
which
other
is
team to lose.
yeah, that's right.
What do
Pray
people ever
for
pray for?
total yeah, just for everyone else to lose.
Well, me to win. It's basically it.
Yes. Yeah,
Dear
either
God, let me win.
way.
If other people have to lose, I'll leave that up to you, but make sure I win.
Exactly.
Sean Foley on Patreon, thanks for the tea, Sean, says, huzzah, at long last. He's talking about you being on the podcast. Question for Sean. What's left to conquer? You've proven your expertise as a painter and art instructor. Now you're into metalworking and smithing. Sculpture next? Question mark. I'll be happily following along. Thanks to the best and most impactful drawing slash painting teacher I've ever had.
Oh, well, thanks, Sean. You didn't have to say that. Yeah, he's a great dude. Known him for a handful of years now. But just like we talked about, I don't know if I've mastered any of those things. So I'm definitely like focused on getting back to painting right now a little bit and getting working on some things technically, getting a little better, hanging out in Rome with all those guys who are just amazing artists. Like it definitely pushes me to want to get better still, be better. I'm working on armor. That's the thing I'm messing with, and maybe someday I'll be as good a guitar player as Sean is. He's a I still work on that. I mean, everything I'm working on or that I work with, I still practice too. I'm still constantly like just going through exercises and and pushing myself and pushing myself down even like feeling sad about the things I do. But I don't think I'm going to start anything too new. I still have to do. I'm doing leather work for making knives, and I have some plans to make some other pieces of leather. I want to make like a plague mask for some reason. It just seemed like a fun thing to make. That can go in the Caravaggio show since his parents both died during the plague.
Yeah.
And then I have sculpted, and I have sculpted some a little bit of clay, and Kate and my son and I have been talking about doing some sculpture together. She just got some new clay. So we're gonna probably get into that. We have a cute little dog that would be fun to sculpt. She's a very fast and lean, so we've been looking at some sculptures online of some people that are really really cool and inspiring. So probably do some sculpture, but no new hobbies can come in right now. I've got a lot of unfinished projects like in every corner of the house.
Very good. You don't rollerblade, do you?
I mean, I played roller hockey for sure for many
Yeah.
years during ice hockey, so I can skate on the wheels. I've left them at my parents' house because my son and I were playing at their house in San Francisco. But I don't go out rollerblading or anything at this point. Not
Yeah,
that I
right.
wouldn't.
Yeah. Um, Thomas Fluharty says Sean's a real rock star, one of the greatest painters alive today, even greater human being. I'm excited to listen. And then M. Graham says, I agree with Thomas. He's a wonderful painter and human being. They're talking about you here. I want to know what I included these two, which I have under the heading of a bit of a love fest, because there was so many comments like that are just, yeah, there's so many warm comments about you that I thought I'd have to
That's
include
nice.
them in here. M. Graham says though, I want to know why we don't see so much new paintings. You kind of talked about it. Is there anything else you want to say about it? That
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think it's one of those things that I've done so long, and it's like I've done a lot of it, and like the other person that asked about ideas, like I don't have as many ideas. My first thoughts in the morning are about other projects, and they're art based, but yeah, painting. Like I mean, I do a lot of it for study still or for teaching, and I have so many paintings. Like I really actually have, I don't know how many paintings I have. If I counted them, it would probably make me depressed. And when people see the amount of paintings that I have that I haven't sold just because of the amount I've done, it's like, how much more painting can I really do? I guess a lot, but it's just not on the forefront of my mind right now. And I'm thinking about all the other projects I have going. But I am thinking about it, and they are coming soon. So everyone will get those. And partially, people aren't seeing them because what I talked about was just posting. Like I can't take good pictures. The new iPhones, I find like up until about the iPhone 8, they were easy to photograph and they looked pretty good. They captured what the painting felt like. And then once I got into the iPhone 10, they they made the camera have the automatic filters of like taking highlights down for selfies and adding a little rosiness to peachiness to faces. And like I just find it depressing taking pictures of the paintings now because they don't look like I want them to look. And then I'm not going to go grab. Sometimes I will grab my old iPhone and have to plug it in and take the picture, then airdrop it to the new one. But there's paintings that are being made, and I just am not sharing as much. But I'm probably not painting as much either because I'm focusing on other things, and I'm doing some illustration work. So those sometimes can't be shared, till later. And I'm doing stuff. I'm definitely not being lazy, that's for sure. And thank you, Thomas. Thomas Fluharty is an amazing artist. Like he's one of my favorites to watch. And we did a great trade a handful of years back, a few years maybe. And like, oh, I love having his work. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have. It's very
it's
good.
so good. So I got some of the cowboy pieces from him, which are just some of my favorite pieces in the collection, and very inspiring. Like I love how he draws.
Yeah. Have you tried that scanner thing with paintings? Not so much for social media, but for prints. Who was I talking to? Lisa Golightly, good many years ago, who's she sells prints as well, and she was saying, "Oh, I stopped photographing my paintings. It's too hard to get them to." I've got an A3 scanner, and I just put the painting on the scanner, scan it, and I'll basically scan the whole painting, and then I'll Frankenstein it together on Photoshop,
Mm,
and it's just even light. It just
yeah.
it's just great. You
Yeah,
ever
I've
heard of
had a
that?
I haven't not exactly like that, like not like big paintings. That sounds hard, but I have had some really good luck scanning paintings when they were small enough to fit on the scanner. If they're too wet, there's just like thousands of little highlights on the brushstrokes because it is a very direct light. But I've had like some amazing some of the paintings I've done that was I have scanned. I think one of my self portraits you posted with a little red in the jacket showing was scanned, and it was like came out better than any of the photographs color wise and the light. And so I haven't really figured out why some don't work and some do based on the amount of dark and light or brush strokes or the time it's been drying or what kind of
Mm.
varnish is on it. I think the satin varnishes probably help a little bit, but yeah, I just like it's like the thing like stopping to record what I'm working on. It's the same thing. It's like when I'm done, I'm like I'm done. I don't want to like now break out the technology and try and get it, from one device to another device just to share it online. And
Yeah, yeah,
I still haven't fully embraced being like a social media person, uh, you know.
yeah.
But I'll post. I got stuff to post, and then I gotta get back to it.
Roman Turas on Instagram says, "What one artwork would you choose to live with if you could?"
Oh yeah, that was one of those questions I think I was trying to figure out like which one would I choose? Like a famous piece? Like do I choose one that's worth a lot so that I someday could sell it and make sure I'm okay? You know what? I mean, I don't know like what's my favorite one to look at? I don't It's hard to pick a favorite. There's some amazing small little gems all over the world, and would it even be a piece of, would it be a two-dimensional painting, or would it be like some suit of armor that I just saw in the Imperial Armory in Vienna? It could be one of those, you know. That's a tough question. I can't, it's hard to, it's like that's that picking favorites thing that I can't figure
Yeah.
out what to do.
All right. I won't push you on it.
That's fine. I mean, maybe if one comes up, but there's just so many. I mean, there's so much amazing stuff out there.
What's the last piece of art you bought?
I don't buy art really. I mean, other than like I'll buy prints here and there that I like from people who do maybe tattoos or things like that. And I actually have a couple great prints. I can't even remember the guy's name, but just like kind of handmade black paper with gold silk screening on it. But I honestly don't buy art. It's just I never really got into collecting things much until the knives more recently, and but art is something that I like trading with people. You know, when if I, instead of buying, I can trade because I've got stuff to trade. And I think maybe those like some of those Fluhardy pieces like that were possibly in his store at one point. I got a hold of, and I really cherish those. I do love those quite a bit. So I don't buy art, unfortunately. I'm in the business of selling art.
Right. Right. This is my desert island question. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. So you're on a desert island, right?
Yeah,
There's nobody coming. You're on your own. All you've got all your food and you've got shelter and you have art making materials. Do you make art even though no one's going to see it?
definitely, 100%. I make so much art that people don't see. And because I think I started at my career early on, where there wasn't social media, there wasn't even smartphones, there wasn't, you know, the internet was barely working. You know, it wasn't really about showing it; it was about making it and doing it. So yeah, absolutely. That sounds really nice, actually.
Great. If there was one main underlying theme to all your work, what do you think it would be?
That underworldly darkness. I don't know. Um, I don't know. But is there a theme? I mean, I'm very much into the craft of all the things that I do, even painting, you know. So I'm sort of a sucker for craft, more so than I would say anything thematically, like as far as the visual goes. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, people might see it as that darkness or the dark side of life, maybe, because even with knives, I'm always going to kind of the darker things with it, you know. I don't know,
Hmm.
darker materials, even sort of darker maybe in the weapons that I choose to make or something. But I don't know if there's an underlying theme. I mean, the theme is just me and who I am.
Yeah. All right. Ben Swanson on Instagram says, "Hey Sean, I'm curious about the whole process you go through with the art reproduction and glisse printing of your work, getting the digital capture, color correction, management, printing, etc." Okay, that's a big question, so just feel free to answer as much or as little of it
Yeah,
as you'd
no, I
like.
totally get that. I mean, I don't, so like we talked about with reproduction, like I don't, or just documenting your work, like I used to do stuff with companies that you bring your art to and they photograph it and they do slides or transparencies, and I just don't do that anymore because I know I kind of have, we have some cameras here that we can shoot it with, but um and I haven't gotten into those giclée prints or whatever. I did one time of one of my more well-known pieces, the one piece that hung in the National Portrait Gallery for the BP award in like 2005.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, people used to say, well, you should do prints. And then I had some instructors that had done prints, and they were very successful with them, you know, where you could do like a run of prints for one painting and make like 30, $40,000 just on prints. And I found that very appealing without having to sell the piece. So I tried it, and it was a total flop for me. So that was the only time I ever offered prints, and that's been over 10 years now since I did that, and I didn't even sell out the 150, or I did maybe 100 of them, and I didn't sell out, you know, in 10 years. So to me, I don't do that. I don't. It's not for me, I guess, or maybe I didn't do it right. Maybe I need to keep doing it, but I just don't do it, and so. I would say for those though, like I've had pretty good results with can't even think of the name, Static Medium. They're out of Los Angeles. A lot of people use them for making prints, and Kate and I had sent some paintings there to be photographed just to document them because there were some commissions that we had to give to the clients. And theirs came out really nice. I got some proofs made, uh, printed just to have the print, and I think
Yeah.
they're really nicely done. So I leave that up to the professionals, um, if I'm going to do it. But maybe someday I'll get back to prints because I think there's a market there. It's just for me, it doesn't seem to work.
Yeah. 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 Amanda Lee Jones in Austin says Sean's a great artist. I got to meet him in Rome once, but didn't get to chat much, so I'm looking forward to this podcast. I teach art to elementary and high school kids, and they always ask me if they should pursue a career in the arts. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, pursue any career you want. I think at that age, I don't know, personally, I don't know if I really even knew what I was thinking or had those goals. I don't know if it was time yet to think about the career you're going to choose, but I think anybody who wants to should, and I would never discourage somebody from doing so. I would definitely be realistic about how hard it can be because it isn't easy, but nothing's really easy anymore. Um, I don't know. Like it's a weird world now. Like I've been talking to people about just like the youth these days and how people don't want to work. And I come from the time where people had their head down and worked hard, and like so maybe I am able to have a career in art because of, I started it when I had to like go out and hustle and meet people and promote in a different way. And I had galleries that, when galleries were even different and they would promote, in actual print magazines and do different kind of work as opposed to just everybody online. Just a totally different world. But I say pursue it for sure. I think everybody should follow their dreams because I don't think there's any other point to being on this planet. I don't think about the all this stuff we were taught in Catholic school about like heaven and some sort of pearly gates in the afterlife. I don't have any hopes for that happening or any thoughts past when the lights go out. I think that's it for me. So I just want to do what I can while I'm here to make myself happy, and that's why, like, if I was on that island, I would paint.
Yeah.
Hopefully I could find a forge while I was there too, maybe do some blacksmithing. But if I had enough money to not have to make more money and I could do whatever I want, I would be so busy making stuff and I would probably never put it on the internet
Yeah. Okay.
because that's what I care about.
Yeah. She also says, what's your favorite painting you've ever done? Now, I know that's a terrible question, so you don't have to
Yeah, I
answer it,
mean,
but
it's hard to stay there. I mean, I haven't made it yet. How about that?
oh, very good.
But I do
Uh,
have a couple of my favorites, the ones that didn't sell, that were either of just me and my guy friends, or there's, I don't know, there's a few, but that changes too. I used to have favorites, and then I just don't, but I definitely like think about the next ones more often than the past ones.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The art business has come up a lot on the podcast. What's your experience of it been? Some people have lovely stories, other people have horror stories. How have you got on with it?
I mean, there's plenty of little horror stories here and there, but as a overall, like I wouldn't change my life. I like what how the business has been for me, but I also went to a school that was like, it wasn't just a school that was teaching us how to make like figurative paintings. It was a school that was teaching us how to be working artists, and they pushed us really hard, not only like to do things more efficiently, but like they did teach us about business, and our teachers were mostly working artists, and they were doing stuff. So it's really fluctuated for me, like I've talked about a little bit, like where some years I teach more and some years it's like at one point when I was teaching, it's like I got a full-time gig teaching. So like I was able to have a salary for the couple, a handful of years with benefits. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. For 15 hours of work a week was the obligation. Then I was teaching some Hollywood folks who were really awesome and cool to me, and like I was getting private chefs making me food, and that was great. And then I was traveling to Europe to teach. It was like teaching's amazing, and that's an art business too, but it's also like a different kind of business of service. And but it's not showing in galleries. And then I've had years where galleries were great and made big chunks of money for me, and then I've had probably more shows that sold nothing. I've had galleries that told me what they want me to paint, and I've really butted heads with those people and had to cancel shows on them. And so like there's the ups and downs of that. I've like recently I said I made that chess set, and that's a whole different kind of like art form for me, but it's like in line with what my current interests are in making stuff, and that's a so I guess it's sculpture in a way, but and that that chess set paid me quite well, more than pretty much any painting I've ever made. So like that's great, but it's also out of chance, and that job actually came from being a teacher. So I don't know. It's a lot of ups and downs, and hopefully the best is yet to come. But um, I think like anything, it's there's gonna be the good with the bad and the bad with the good, and hopefully more good in the end. And at least if you love what you're doing, then like it's always good.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What sort of price range are your paintings selling for these days?
I mean, I haven't like raised my prices in many years, and so like studies from classes, like when I sell them in like the galleries, were selling my like alla prima studies for like the 3,000 on the low end, and but when I sell privately, I can I could give 50% off. I don't like 50% off because it's not really about like that they're marking them up 100%. It's more that I'm giving a cut to this dealer, but I can still do like even 75% the price, and it's everybody wins. Then I get a little more, they get a little less, and then on the high end, my paintings go for like 45,000 or so, but not much higher than that. And that's the big stuff. And
Yeah,
but now it's just kind of hovering in the middle. A lot more low end study sales, and some commissions in the teens and whatnot. But I think with social media, it's sort of in some way gotten those higher prices and bigger galleries. I've sort of backed out of too, like showing galleries. So my market is more of the regular people on social media and some of my old collectors, but it's definitely more in the into the 20s, and sometimes, but like more of the like teens and lower study sales, but
yeah,
more moving, a lot more art than in the old days. But I don't miss like sharing money with galleries at all. I've got a few that I work with and I like, and they do their thing and stuff. But like I've definitely had some bad experiences with the galleries who just take the money and they don't put it back into you. And it's like, well,
yes,
wait, we both
yeah,
have to do the work and make some sacrifices.
yeah. Um, that big one you're talking about, that's gonna be big
That'll be, yeah,
money.
I'm gonna be like $1 million. I don't know, we'll see. you know, and they'll probably, sometimes you do something silly and you just say a number, and it's like that makes it more desirable somehow, or makes it sell all of a sudden. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not doing it for sale, so I'm just doing it because I have to do it, and so then we'll see what happens later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have a big art dream you'd like to achieve before you die?
Not some huge one. I mean, I think like all those things, that all the little projects I've mentioned are all part of my dreams and my daily like obsessions and stuff for sure. Like I really want to like the Caravaggio thing. I'm excited about right now, and so like that could be it would be cool to see something come to fruition like that. But I have a bunch of songs I want to write and ideas about that, and the big paintings, of course. I don't have huge paintings beyond that. Um, for the Western show, I've got some ideas. I'm going to do this whole Donner Party stuff. I don't know if you know much about the Donner Party. It's a
The
good
name
old
rings a bell.
American. So it's like this during like the kind of manifest destiny time of the Wild West, when the white settlers were heading west and trying to take over the land. Like the whole they're crossing the Sierras in one of the worst recorded winters in history, and they ended up having to eat each other. It's like a nice American cannibal story. So I want to paint some of that stuff. I actually listened to that in a podcast. Those guys that do the last podcast on the left. I don't know if you've ever listened to them, but they did a whole series.
I haven't, yeah, I've heard of it, but yeah,
So the
it
Donner
reminds
Party
me
one,
of,
it's just, there's a live movie with the Argentinian team,
yes,
soccer team or football team. That, like, yeah, it's kind of like that thing, but like it's a real story that I grew up kind of hearing about because of where I grew up, and I grew up in San Francisco. But like when we would go skiing, you pass through all that area: Donner Pass, Donner Lake, Donner Ranch, all these things, and it's just like these.
mm,
It's like a big cannibal story. So a lot of these people that paint Western themed art are doing like the cowboy and the sunset, and like, well, that's
mm,
beautiful and all. Like if you really read all the stories, there's what's much more harshness and darkness, and
yeah, that's
that's
what I was going to
and
say. That
that's
movie, Dead Man. Do you ever see that with Johnny Depp?
I know it. I don't know if I've actually watched the whole thing or just parts, but
Well, that's right into that whole what you're talking about.
yeah, okay. Yeah,
Is
and I think
is
like it's interesting, it's real, and to me, I think it'll, I guess if people were talking about my work being kind of dark, it's getting going to get darker. Just to let you know, it get a little bit darker here and soon. So,
yeah.
um,
Did you like
yeah, those
Deadwood?
are some plans. Yeah, yeah, I love Deadwood for sure. I think it's just a perfectly gritty version of the. I wish they wouldn't have ended it,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, no, I love
I
that
like
show.
the dialogue. It's unbelievable the
Oh, it's
dialogue in
great.
that show.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. I should probably watch it again. But yeah, I use that's a lot of my inspiration too. I would say Deadwood, and I could even see like my paintings going more towards like how Tarantino would handle a western in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
way.
Well, have you seen the his one? What is it? The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't wait for that one to come out. I love the
yeah.
soundtrack to that. I actually got to go see Ennio Morricone in Rome perform like one of his last concerts at the Baths of Caracalla, and man, it was an amazing experience.
Wow, wow.
Played all the hits.
Yeah. Amanda Lee Jones again in Austin says, "What's your billing? What's the biggest challenge you're Or no, what is your biggest challenge as an artist?"
Paying bills. I think that's the challenge. Making it fun, using it to pay for the kind of bills that I guess modern living and definitely California require. That's the challenge because I think that's part of what makes it feel like work because it is work. But I
All
don't
right.
want any other job. I wouldn't want any other job or any other career. It's just the byproduct of what I chose to do, and it's totally fine, and I'm happy to be able to do it. But yeah, it's just like when I have to do it, I have to pay bills. It doesn't mean I don't like it while I'm doing it. It's just like it just creates a different layer there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, this is my last question. I ask this to everyone who comes on the podcast. If there's
Okay.
one thing you could pass on to future generations, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good tough question. But I do think it's like that way, like what we've talked about, just doing what you want, following your dreams, and working hard at it too. I mean, I think that's something that I've met just with generational differences between me and some of the younger people I've taught is like you gotta want it. And if you want it and you do it, then you'll like it. But again, like we talked about too, with like what is there, and I'm not definitely not waiting for the afterlife. Like it's the now life, and it's I do as much as I can of what I want to do, and balance it with what I have to do. But I think that's it, just like following your gut as much as possible and not worrying about what other people think about it.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Well, I don't know what's gone on with my camera. I look like I'm
Yeah,
neon. I'm glowing here. I think it's the
yeah, it's a
sun. Um, okay, well, look, I think your paintings are fantastic. I have done for years. I think I know you've talked about portraits a lot, but I think you do get a lot of narrative into your paintings. I mean, technically, they're brilliant, and they're the sort of paintings that I think it's kind of like the best of figurative painting. But I mean, this is just as I receive them because like some people just really like photorealism. I like it and I appreciate it and everything, but there's something conveyed and there's in paintings where you can see the hand of the artist a bit more and the skill. I know photorealism is very skillful, but there's a skill in that delicate balance between doing too much and doing, and just doing enough so that the story's conveyed, the, visually something's conveyed. You still know, you're very keenly aware of the illusion of painting. You're simultaneously you're going, that's a flat surface with some paint on it, and
Yeah.
yet why is that person looking that way? Why do they, what's going on for them? I feel for them. And then another part of my brain is still going, yeah, but that's just a flat surface. I
Yeah.
really like that when I see that in a painting where it's both all the time. The two of those two things are kept in focus all the time. And it creates a kind of beautiful tension. So you do that really well, I think.
Thank you. Thanks.
And a great, I don't know what the word is, a great kind of insight into humanity. Even though I don't know these people, I get that there's something going on for them, and there is a bit of a narrative going on, and it goes very deep. And even though we were kind of joking about the names, I think it's similar. I think you paint them, and I don't know whether you're consciously doing it or not, but they're, it's very easy to look at a boring portrait. There's lots of them. They're all over Instagram, meaning they're very well executed, but there's sort of no magic. They don't have any juice. There's something, and it's nothing to do. It's very hard for me to put my finger on what's the difference between one and the other. But it's just missing life. It's a bit like the Frankenstein thing. Before the electricity goes into the monster. Of
Yeah.
course, this, of course, would naturally come up when I'm talking to you. I would use this kind of metaphor, but it's apt. It's like it's not. They're not alive, and you manage to, get the electricity on, get the monster to come to life, and all your portraits. I haven't seen. I mean, maybe they're all in a closet somewhere, but I haven't seen any of your paintings that don't have that kind of life coming out of them, and life not in the kind of Disney life, I mean, life in the complexity of life, of the heartbreaks and sorrows and joys and ups and downs that, it means to be alive. You manage to get that, that's kind of the electricity you manage to get into your painting. So yeah, they're brilliant. And all the other stuff that you do is really interesting as well, all the knife stuff, and having the courage to kind of go, you know what, I think I'm just going to go and do this knife thing, particularly when your income is dependent on the painting. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of courage to go, you know what, I think I'm going to make some knives, and to get really into it and to devote yourself to it. And as you do the same with bread making, like we haven't seen any pictures of your bread on Instagram, but I imagine, just from hearing you talk and getting a sense of the sort of person you are, that you would have applied the same kind of focus and dedication to making bread as you did to making knives. We kind of see the knife thing a little bit on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think that's lovely. I mean, I think that's a life lived to the hilt. I remember hearing somebody describing how they wanted to arrive at their death, at their point of death. And they were saying, I want my body to be like used up and about to fall apart, a little bit like the Blues Brothers car when they arrive at the at the police at the county hall. They get out of the car and it just falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's because they've used their body up completely. And I kind of, that's what I get from you when you're talking about all these different things that you're passionate about, and it's beautiful. It's inspiring to hear,
Yeah.
and it's been
Thanks.
nice to get to know you a little
Yeah.
bit.
Likewise. That was really awesome. What you just said. I really appreciate that. I want to record that part and just that'll be in my when I die. We'll use that.
Okay.
And I'm glad you didn't ask me about how I get that into my paintings because that's something I don't understand.
No,
The,
I get
the
that. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I
I
got it
get
when you
that
were talking
question.
about naming the paintings.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I get that question a lot though. How do you get that life or that soul? And I don't it's not something I try. It's just something that
Well,
feel.
isn't it that thing? You tell me. You're a teacher, right? But it's that thing of you can teach people to paint, but you can't teach them to be an artist.
Yep. very much so. I think so.
Yeah. So I think that, like what we're talking about, that kind of lightning in a bottle that you managed to capture is part of just you.
Yeah.
I've talked to lots of different artists, and it's the same for them all. Even the ones that can talk about it,
Hmm.
they don't really know. Not
Yeah,
really.
yeah. I mean, I could try and sort of dissect it and figure it out, but yeah, I don't know what that is really.
Yeah.
It's
I
to
think it's the
everything.
essence of the person. Like, I mean, I remember hearing an interview with Francis Bacon. It's a sort of famous one, and he was, being like, he was getting drunk in the interview, and he was saying, really, what painting is about is if I can convey what's inside me. This isn't exactly what he said, but this is the gist of it, or as I heard it anyway. If I can convey what's inside me and it resonates with what's inside you, then I've done something. That's what it
Hmm.
is. That's all I'm trying to
Yeah.
do. Is just convey the emptiness in me, maybe, and maybe it resonates with the emptiness in you. I mean,
Yes.
of course he's going to say it like that. But I think that's it, really, isn't it? Like, you can't put it in words because it's you. It's like what the question about masculinity.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
hard to
Exactly.
self-reflect on certain things. They're the sort of things that only other people can see in us. Where they can kind
Definitely.
of
Yeah.
see what's going on. There's a
Yeah.
light.
Absolutely. Yeah. There you are. Mine's
Yeah,
starting to do it too. It's like I'm getting the bright light coming in.
yeah.
I swear we're in different time zones though.
We are. It's getting dark here. It's probably just getting brighter there. Um, okay, well, I keep in touch with everyone. So I'm sure we'll keep in touch for Zoom tea or whatnot. But yeah, we'll say goodbye for now.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone who's listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
I've never felt this good in my entire life. Make me some spaghetti.
Actually, I'd prefer a cup of tea. A cup of tea would be lovely. So, yeah, just a little reminder, mainly because every second or third person who becomes a patron has got in touch with me and said, you know what, I've been listening to your podcast for ages and I didn't become a patron, not because I don't have the money, not because I don't think it's great, I just didn't get around to it. So this is a little friendly reminder that if you'd like to be a patron, you'd like to buy me a cup of tea, go to patreon.com/John Dalton, gently does it, all one word, or follow the link in the show notes to become a patron. I would really appreciate it if you could do that, particularly if you've been meaning to and you just haven't got around to it. It would be great. It would mean a lot to me. All right, thank you. Bye.
We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. Come on, buy us a drink. We are the Argyle Pimps. So buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle